here. If you don't have your camera on, can you please use the raise hand feature so we can make sure that we have quorum? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. Okay, awesome. So we are starting tonight's meeting at 7:04 p.m. And we will start with the approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any amendments to the agenda that they want to make?
I would like to add, sorry, 1 second. Fiona Pham as a student conduct committee appointment. They are consent.
Wait, I don't know.
Yes.
Y'all passed this part already. I just came in. I'm sorry. Can I strike my my two funding?
We're doing amendments right now. Sorry,
Oh.
give me 1 second. Strike your funding.
Yes, please. Thank you so much.
Got it.
And can we strike efficacy grant?
Striking bag.
We also strike capital contingency.
Striking capital contingency.
Could you also strike SFS allocations, please?
Sorry?
SFS allocations. Could you strike that?
SFS.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm here on proxy for Jonathan today. Is it not going on? And could you? Is it possible to move up the Sfs guidelines? It's at the bottom of the agenda.
We're striking those?
Not striking. Could you move it up because I have to go very soon? It's a consent item.
Sorry?
Do you mind moving it up the agenda, Sfs guidelines?
Moving it up?
Yeah.
Naomi?
Dr. Geller, can we do that? Or Jessica?
Yes, you can certainly do it. A good place to do it, since it's funding, would be in the section where you do contingency and the other funds.
Okay, so we can move it in the funding section then.
Got it.
Thank you so much.
Can you strike TGIF and strike Emily Helfen to John Wooden Center Board of Governors? And then can we add Helen Sanchez to John Wooden Board of Governors? And I can type her name in the chat.
Can you also strike the mental health presentation?
Yes.
Could you please strike ARC?
Could you strike the SWC programming fund, please?
Okay, any more amendments? If there are no amendments, a motion.
I motion to approve the agenda for October 6th.
Second.
A second.
Freeze motions, Sachi seconds. Let me pull up my little thing. Okay. IVP?
Yes.
EVP?
Yes.
Gen Rep 1?
Yes.
Gen Rep 2?
Yes.
Gen Rep 3?
Yes.
AAC?
Yes.
EEC,
Yes.
CAC,
Yes.
CSC, FAC,
Yes.
FSC,
Yes.
SWC,
Yes.
TSR,
Yes.
ISR. Don't see Walker here. So awesome. By a vote of 12 to 0, the motion passes and the agenda is approved for this week. For the CSC, proxies don't vote, so that's why I didn't call on you. Awesome. Moving on to approval of the minutes, which were from, I don't recall. So if anybody knows those, you can just motion.
I motion to approve the minutes from September 29th, 2020.
I second.
Great. Sachi motions, Noe seconds. IVP?
Yes.
EVP?
Yes.
Gen Rep 1?
Yes.
Gen Rep 2?
Yes.
Gen Rep 3?
Abstain.
AAC?
Yes.
CEC?
Abstain.
CAC?
Yes.
CSC? Sorry, FAC?
Yes.
FSC?
I joined late, so do I abstain?
You could, yeah. It's up
I'll
to
say
you.
yes. Yeah.
Okay. SWC?
Yes.
TSR?
Yes.
Okay, by a vote of 10 to 0 to 2, the motion passes and the minutes from last week are approved. Awesome. Moving on to public comment. So public comment is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to council on any issue that they feel like addressing the council. Just remember you have 2 minutes to speak. Remember to use gender inclusive language, attack the idea, not the person. And remember that freedom from accountability, or freedom of speech does not mean freedom from accountability. Awesome. So if you want to give public comment, feel free to use the raise hand function and then I'll call on you. Going once. Just a reminder, this is a public comment opportunity. Okay, going twice. All right, we are concluding public comment at 7:12 p.m. Okay, moving on to our next item on the agenda, contingency programming.
Hi, everyone. So we had 4 applications this week. The total amount required was $1,761.65, and the total amount recommended is $1,421.13. And I will write that in the chat. Oh, and these are to non-USAC entities.
Anybody? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. I motion to approve the contingency allocation of $1,421.13 to non-USAC entities.
I second.
Okay, Justin motions, Bree seconds. IVP?
Yes.
EVP?
Yes.
Gen Rep 1?
Yes.
Gen Rep 2?
Yes.
Gen Rep 3?
Yes.
AAC?
Yes.
CEC?
Yes.
CAC?
Yes.
FAC,
Yes.
FSC,
Yes.
SWC,
Yes.
TSR,
Yes.
ISR, I'm dead. Okay. I keep doing that. Thank you all for bearing with me. Okay. By a vote of 13-0, the motion passes and the contingency allocations are approved for this week. Moving on to the SFS guidelines.
Hi. So we just need to pass the updated SFS guidelines for this year. I don't know if Fernando wants to pull it up for everyone to see, but we just need the consent for it to pass.
Fernando, do you want to pull them up?
You can share screen if you want, Angela.
Okay, sure. Since I'm proxying, I don't know much, but I can just.
Angela, it's a little hard to hear you. Do you mind speaking up?
Yeah. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just gonna scroll through. I don't know the details, but if you need me to stop, I think the red parts are what's being updated. And parts of it have been updated to reflect COVID-19 specific funding. Okay, I'm gonna continue scrolling. Yeah, I think that's it. So this is the COVID-19 part was the most of the updates.
Is this a consent item or an action item?
Consent.
Consent.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So does anyone have any opposition to the guidelines? Awesome. If not, then the guidelines for the SFS fund are approved for this year. Thank you, Angela. And also, I just wanted to point out that if anyone else has like funding guidelines, this would be the perfect time to change those, or just to make sure that any changes that you need to allocate funding, how you need to allocate funding this year can happen. Dr. Geller, I'm sure, would be more than happy to help, or Fernando or Jessica. Yeah, okay. Moving on in the agenda, we're moving into special presentations. The first presentation that we have tonight is the USAC Seat at the Table initiative. This is an initiative that is out of my office, and it's an attempt to bring student organizations to USAC and also make all of the council members who are sitting here listen to student organizations about the work that they are doing within their respective communities. So hopefully that this will be a good opportunity for student orgs to be able to participate a lot more in council, know the resources that are available at spaces like council. As we've heard people say before, I never knew a space like this even existed or was even possible for me to talk about my feelings and whatnot. So hopefully the initiative can help with that. And for full transparency too, the person who sits with us at the table, I will give them privileges to be able to like speak at different times whenever they have like something that they want to raise, or if they want to, partake in a conversation that we're having, that they're more than welcome to do that through my powers as chair of the meeting. I don't have a vote, but I can get people to speak, so I guess that's pretty cool. Cool. So moving right into the first presentation, we have the Bruin Democrats, and we have Evan Farrar.
Good evening, everyone. I'm super happy to be here. I'm going to share my screen if I can do that. Yes, I can. Okay. Perfect. Is that visible to everyone? Or the loading screen is just, okay, perfect. All right, thank you so much everyone for having me here. Thank you to all the council members. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here to present a little bit about what Bruin Democrats is about, what the campus climate is right now, what we're kind of dealing with on the ground, and also what we're looking to do in the upcoming year. So I'm super happy to be here. Thank you so much again. So to talk a little bit about what I'm going to go over today, it should be a really brief presentation. I'm going to talk a little bit about what Bruin Dems does, a little bit about us. I'm going to then transition to talking a little bit about Bruin Republicans, which I will warn before that section as well, that I'm going to be delving into some really complex and distressing topics for some, and I will issue a content warning before that section, just to be completely transparent up front. And then I'll also be talking a little bit about what we're doing, what our response is, and then what do we need from USAC to make this response successful. So moving on, a little bit about me. My name's Evan. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm the president of Bruin Dems for the upcoming year. I'm a third-year public affairs major. I'm really glad to see some familiar faces. This is also the headshot that I use for everything. So I just thought I would include it because I use it for everything. Moving forward. Also, I want to make this super open if anyone has any questions in the middle of the presentation to go ahead and ask me. I don't know if that's welcome. I think that's Naomi's business and not mine, but I would love to welcome any and all questions during my presentation. Moving on. So what does Bruin Democrats do on campus? What's our role on campus? So this is just some of our activities on and off campus. Bruin Democrats is the official arm of the Democratic Party on campus, but we're so much more than that, I think. And that's kind of what I wanted this slide to encapsulate. We get progressives elected. Progressives is the key operative word there. So we co-host phone banks, text banks, candidate events, town halls. We do that independently as well, but I wanted to emphasize that we do co-host those events with other organizations as well, building coalitions around these campaigns. We also stimulate a lot of interest among young voters. It's pretty explicit in our Constitution that one of our missions is to build collective power among young people interested in democratic politics. So we register a lot of young voters. We share information and opportunities on our website and in our meetings as well. We also try and facilitate access and opportunity along those lines. So we identify opportunities career-wise, professional development-wise with campaigns, offices, and on-campus initiatives as well. We also try as much as we can to advocate for young Dems, promoting progressive policy, communicating our needs and wants to the party, because our needs and wants are quite different from what the establishment Democratic Party looks like and what they advocate for right now. We also try and stay connected with the party, which sounds boring, and it is kind of my least favorite part of my job, but I have to. We try and stay connected with the party by attending convention, which is actually very fun. It's just the procedural parts that aren't as fun, in my opinion. But we're trying to really lobby changes to the state party leadership and platform to reflect young Democrats' needs and wants as well. And then lastly, we cultivate relationships. We're a community of like-minded folks looking to create progressive change. And we really like to, foster those inclusive environments, especially for new students that are coming in to give them a home on campus. So that's a little bit about what we do. Oh, these are some fun pictures from our convention with a variety of people. Yeah, we were super excited to go to the California Democratic Convention back in spring 2019. Unfortunately, we missed out on it this past spring. But yeah, just some super fun people that we met. We have Katie Hill, Bernie Sanders, Kamala Harris, and Michelle Obama, but a paper cutout version. So yeah, just some super fun people that we've been able to meet through our efforts. So moving on to a more sobering topic, Bruin Republicans and their actions on campus. I wanted to talk about this because I think it's really relevant to what our campus community is going through right now, what the political climate on campus is. And I think there is a role that I'll get into a little later, but I think that there is a role for USAC to really intervene in this matter. Specifically, I'm going to talk a little bit about how Bruin Republicans has basically become radicalized over the past year and a half. I'll go over the timeline a little bit, but I also want to give a content warning before this section that essentially warns for racism, transphobia, xenophobia, anti-Semitism, sexism. Bruin Republicans and their splinter organizations have engaged with these points of view, these beliefs, time and time again, and I feel obligated in a sense to sort of showcase that, but also in no way do I want to amplify it inadvertently or want to, involuntarily expose someone who would feel uncomfortable with that. So I just wanted to give a warning beforehand. So moving into a little bit of a timeline, pretty depressing downward spiral in my opinion, but this is kind of how Bruin Republicans has evolved over time. Essentially, Bruin Republicans kind of entered 2018, 2019 with a very free market libertarian orientation, transitioned to a more pro-Trump, aggressively xenophobic board in 2019 that prompted a lot of resignations from their board actually of more moderate Republicans, to put it lightly. And then we also had the rise of America First Bruins, which is sort of a splinter group around that time as well. And then we transition into this summer. Bruin Republicans and America First Bruins are increasingly working together. They denounced the resolution to rename Jan Steps to Tongva Steps. They denounced the protests. They've been sharing some pretty vile rhetoric online around those. And it's pretty open and unapologetic racism on display. And then now we sort of have, especially America First Bruins and Bruin Republicans to a certain extent, really openly avows white supremacy, props up the patriarchy, and poses an active threat to students on this campus. I'm not going to stay on this slide for too long, but these are a few things that Bruin Republicans and America First Bruins have propped up online and support. They're pretty disgusting. And yeah, I don't want to stay on this slide for too long, but I felt obligated to include these here. I wanted to say at this point, Bruin Republicans and America First Bruins, though they are technically separate organizations, both registered through SOL, they're essentially inseparable. They feature many of the same people. And they have very similar leadership, very similar political orientations. And I don't really think, it's putting it past Bruin Republicans to say that they have a very close relationship with America First Bruins and, do not disavow the rhetoric of America First Bruins as well. And my argument is that they both pose a very serious physical threat to students on this campus. But there has yet to be a mass movement to address that physical threat. And to address Bruin Republican's stature as an official organization on this campus. So moving on to what we're doing. Our approach essentially to what Bruin Republicans and America First Bruins has been up to is essentially actively reporting to EDI. The problem is that EDI primarily handles complaints against staff and not student groups. That's listed on their website. We also try and raise awareness without engaging. The without engaging part is a little, is a new approach, quite honestly, for us. We have made the mistake in the past with engaging and amplifying their rhetoric through having debates, joint meetings with them. We've been rightly criticized for that, and that's something that we've stopped doing. But we also, we're afraid that simply just raising awareness, especially in the virtual environment, has a lack of tangible impact. We've also tried turning to SOL, but SOL has a pretty demonstrated history of doing very little to sanction Bruin Republicans or any of its members for their hateful rhetoric. just transitioning quickly into what the UC-wide policy is and what our campus policy is, because there is, obviously we have free speech protections on this campus. I just wanted to include these here because I think it's quite clear that, our campus policy says that, free speech political activities must be conducted in a manner that reasonably protects others from becoming involuntary audiences. The UC-wide policy states basically the same. There needs to be reasonable protection to persons against practices that would make them involuntary audiences or place them in reasonable fear. Place them in reasonable fear being an important clause. And I think the key question here, is when subjected to relentless racism, xenophobia, sexism, transphobia, and more, are UCLA students rendered an involuntary audience? And particularly when virtual abuse comes while our education is essentially 100% virtual. So I think that's the central question of what I've come in front of the board to ask. And I think the answer to that is a pretty resounding yes. So what do we need? Despite these challenges, we're moving forward. I definitely did not want to give the impression that, my entire presentation here today is about Bruin Republicans, because I'm here on behalf of Bruin Democrats. I want to talk about Bruin Democrats. So a lot of our pre-election activities, we're doing a lot of matching fundraisers, which we found to be extremely effective. Just sharing a little bit about those, our fundraisers for Black Lives Matter and affiliated organizations, including bail funds, raised almost $2,000 in 3 hours. We also have an anti-voter suppression fundraiser that's actually launching tomorrow, so please stay tuned for that. We're super excited about that. And that's going to be the same format. We're going to release a document of organizations affiliated with this cause, and then we're going to be matching donations up to a certain amount. And I think more broadly, the direction that we're going in is we're planning on contributing, over $5,000 following this exact model to progressive causes, but we can't do that by ourselves. So, essentially partnering with us, I really would like to partner with USAC offices on this, not only financially, but I think human capital wise, I think it's really important for an organization like Bruin Democrats to engage with student government. I think we've done a pretty poor job, honestly, in the past doing that. And I really want to have a good relationship with y'all, which is why I'm so excited to be here. But essentially, taking a step back, so I will reiterate, our goal is $5,000 for matching fundraisers ahead of and after November 3rd. And then our request for USAC specifically is $2,000 of USAC funding support to contribute directly to progressive grassroots initiatives and groups, not candidates sought out by Bruin Dems. We really believe that with USAC support, we can continue to advocate for progressive causes, recruit students through our efforts, and put our money where our mouth is, because honestly, that's what matters. And I think, this might seem like I'm deviating from the topic of, I was 2 seconds ago, I was talking about the radicalization of Bruin Republicans, and now I'm talking about USAC funding. But I really want to reiterate that this is, not only proactive, but this is also reactive to the campus climate that we're living in. I think it's important that all of us that are progressive minded and that care about the health and well-being of our student body really partner to promote these causes. And I think this is a huge, important part of that. So this is my last slide. So let's rally support together. I really believe that Bruin Dems and USAC can partner in this effort. And yeah, I'm really excited to get started. So thank you so much for all of you for welcoming me here today. I apologize if it was a bit longer than anticipated, but I'm really excited to get started. Thank you.
Thank you, Evan, for your presentation and for being here tonight. Does anyone have any questions? I know that there's some concerns about the funding for starters. I don't think that does anybody want to speak actually to like the funding issue? Or like experiences that they've had? Sachi, do you want to?
Yeah, I can speak. I think this is what I learned through trying to do this as well, is like we can't use student fees to go to outside organizations. So any use of student fees has to directly benefit the student body, and it can't go external like that. And so my experience was that in TGIF, we tried to donate money to Black Lives Matter and we couldn't do that because it was an external organization.
Yeah, I want to reemphasize, I think I wasn't explicit enough about this in my presentation, but I think the intention with the $2,000 isn't necessarily to, I guess I worded it wrong on my slide. It's not necessarily to funnel it directly to external organizations, because I wouldn't want to, obviously that's not allowed, but even if it was allowed, I don't think that would be entirely morally acceptable as y'all represent students and not the world. But I also, I think that $2,000 will also go towards, student retention, student involvement in planning these fundraisers. Obviously, we're not compensating them, but we do need sort of the materials to keep up our virtual outreach. So that is part of it. That's definitely not all of the $2,000, and obviously we'd want to adjust that accordingly based on what you just told me. So thank you. But yeah, I definitely want to not give the impression that all of that money is going to be, funneled outside of UCLA.
I'm sure that those of us with funding bodies, and it's a really great thing that our FICOM chair, David, is here too. I think he could really be a good resource in finding out which funding resources are available for Bruin Democrats. I know that there are other council members who also have funds that they oversee, that they would be happy to go through the guidelines with you and see where funding lies in this big pot of money. And actually it's a really small pot of money. It seems big, but yeah.
No, I'd be happy to connect with anyone who's interested.
Yeah. Does anyone else have any questions, comments, concerns? Okay. If not, thank you so much, Evan, for your presentation, and thank you for being here tonight. Feel free to stay for as long as you want, or for as little as you want.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it.
Awesome. Cool. Moving on to our next presentation, we have a presentation about NOVID from Jong.
Yes, I believe that the NOVID team is here today and ready to present.
Hello, is that me?
Yes,
Jong?
I believe so. Hello there.
You're good to go.
Okay, great. Jong, did you want to add anything first, or shall I just go ahead?
No, I think you can go first.
Okay, well, great. Well, hello, nice to meet everybody. I should say it's actually quite fun for me to talk to this group from UCLA because I spent 2 years of my life in the mathematical sciences building, the nice rectangular block that they put all the mathematicians in. So I have nice memories of being there. I was actually there while I was a PhD student a while ago. Now, I was actually studying math, as you know, and I'm a math professor now at Carnegie Mellon University. And we managed to get in touch somehow with Jong. I don't exactly know how, but we have come up with a completely different way to approach contact tracing. And actually, that's what I'm going to talk about today. It's actually you're among the first people in the world actually to hear about this. There's a fundamentally different approach to how you can try to use smartphones or digital tools to do contact tracing or to control COVID-19 at all. And that's actually the app that I'm going to be talking about, called NOVID. And the first important thing is to say, there's a whole lot of apps out there. There's like 100 apps out there to control COVID. And they basically all do the same thing. They just find, when there's somebody who's a positive case, they go and tell the people around them that they should isolate and quarantine, right? Basically, they're doing contact tracing the way you normally do contact tracing, just with an app. Now, when you're talking about a university, unfortunately, if you want to be able to control the spread of a disease that is spreading in a dense environment, it's actually a bit too late if the only thing you do is you tell people after they've been exposed. So what we do instead is actually quite different. I'm just going to share a video, a very short video of what the app actually shows. We've made something which can give you the equivalent of a weather radar, but for COVID. And so to talk through what this does, if you can see, there's some bar chart that's animated, right? And the way to read this is that as time progresses, it tells you what the COVID situation is relative to you. June 23rd, June 24th, June 25th. As you know, LA actually has quite a number of cases, but and this is not LA, this is just fictitious data. But what we provide anyone is that you would be able to see, if UCLA was using this, you'd be able to see whether or not the COVID cases were coming closer to you, where the way to read this chart is that the height of a bar is how many COVID cases there are, and the distance it is to the right is the degree of separation that that connection is from you. And the reason why this is important is because, especially in LA, is it actually that important whether there's somebody whether somebody got COVID and that somebody is like 500 feet from you? Or is it relevant that they're 5 miles away from you? I mean, the people move around. What's much more relevant is if there's somebody that you hang out with, who hangs out with somebody else, who hangs out with somebody else. And if you found out that COVID was distance 3 away from you, what that would mean is that there's someone you hang out with who hangs out with someone who hangs out with someone who has COVID. You'll notice that this chart doesn't have any names on it. And this chart also has no addresses on it. This is actually the fundamentally different approach, right? So instead of just finding every positive case and telling people who were directly connected to that positive case and asking them to quarantine or isolate, this is totally different. Instead, for every positive case, you can tell everybody how far away that case was in terms of the number of degrees of separation, sort of like this, Kevin Bacon, right? It's like Kevin Bacon meets COVID-19. And the reason why this is important is because if you have this, you can actually actively avoid getting COVID. And now we're getting into what's different between this and everything else. UC San Diego is pioneering something that Google and Apple are helping them with. The city of Los Angeles is using something made by Citizen. And all of these other things are all of the same category. The way that everything else works is it just attempts to tell certain people to quarantine and isolate. And unfortunately, not only does that not necessarily control the disease quickly enough, unfortunately it has many other issues too. For example, there are issues of compliance. If you think about it, all of these other types of apps are apps that are designed to protect other people from you. And if you think about it, somehow people don't all run to try to find apps that protect other people from them. And what we did is we actually flipped the incentive structure. We protect you from others. And so actually, ironically, usually all of these apps, it's that the administration says, go install an app, and the student body says no. Ours is different. In our situation, student governments are generally enthused by this idea because this is, I don't know if you guys have quarantine housing. This is basically a way to avoid quarantine housing because you would get to see if something is creeping towards you, take whatever actions you want to take, maybe be more careful with your mask or when you're choosing to go to a party or not. This is up to you to decide. It's all anonymous, right? But what we made up is we made up something which is actually directly in the self-interest of the app user, where if you have it, then you keep your privacy, but you also have the information that's equivalent to being able to see storms coming from far away. And with that, actually, that's what you would need to be able to come back to normal. And if you ask, like, why am I doing this at all? I got involved in the whole thing because I wasn't happy with the way the world is going. I mean, we're having these Zoom things for everything. And unfortunately, if all we're going to do is either wait until a vaccine comes, goodness knows how long that's going to take to roll out properly, there's another option, which is to take matters into your own hands and allow everybody to be able to see if there's virus striking people closer and closer to them. So again, this is basically a tool to let people avoid COVID by seeing if COVID is striking closer and closer to them. And that's fundamentally different from every other intervention that's currently being used. Actually, it's also fundamentally more effective. I've actually just finished a research article on this that I'm about to put up on the internet. But effectively, a lot of these other apps, which are designed where they will tell people if they've been 6 feet apart from a COVID case for at least 15 minutes, unfortunately, biologically, the chance that you catch COVID in that situation is less than 10%. And so these other systems that are being deployed all around the world, they're sending these notifications saying you should go in quarantine. But if you get the notification, the chance that you actually have COVID is less than 10%. And unfortunately, it's only a matter of time before other people also figure this out. And as soon as people figure out that when you're told to quarantine anonymously and non-enforceably with a less than 10% chance of being positive, the compliance rate will probably drop to zero, near zero, at which point it will have no effect. And what we were trying to do is we're actually trying to control this because we don't know how long it's going to take before a vaccine comes out. So I wanted to present this to all of you. The way that we've been growing is we've been growing through student bodies, student organizations, student governments, people who actually want to take matters into their own hands, because this is the generation. You guys are the generation. You are the future. You're the ones who are caring about your education and your jobs. And unfortunately, the systems that are out there are not necessarily creating something that is directly beneficial to the college students of today. And so we're running a movement to try to help bring everybody onto a better system.
Is there anything else you would like to add?
Oh, I actually would be I intentionally was short because I was actually interested in having an interactive conversation. I'm actually a little bit curious because you guys must clearly care. I assume people here care about COVID in the sense that I assume you want life to be back to normal as soon as possible. And I'll tell you the reason I'm working on this is because I don't see anyone else in the entire world trying to do this. Everyone else is just waiting for someone else to make a vaccine. And this is a way to actively attempt to bring the situation under control. But I'd love to turn the rest into something which is a bit interactive because then I can go on certain directions.
Does anyone have any questions then? If no one does, I think I'd like to ask the first question.
I think there are questions, John, but you're more than welcome to be in the queue.
Okay, then I'd just like to ask first everyone here if they're aware of the baseline model of contact tracing the professor here is talking about, and what he means when he discusses the differences between NOVID and other contact tracing forms.
Could you please explain, John?
Oh, sure. Basically, there's a short and simple explanation in the form of a comic. I'd like to share. Does everyone see the comic here? Okay, then I'll keep scrolling. Do tell me if there's any part where I need to go back because I went too fast.
John, I have a quick question.
Yes.
Are you going to go through it with us, or are you scrolling?
If you want, I can read it out. Would that help?
No, could you just send it to put it in the chat? I think Emily could probably turn it on. And then we can all just go through it so folks can ask some questions.
Okay, then let's see, chat.
It might also be helpful for you to explain the gist of this.
Well, the short explanation is that the usual way of doing contact tracing, where you send contact tracing people to people who have been infected and ask them where they've been. And then you go to all the people who have been to those locations and ask them, and tell them about that they might have been exposed and ask them to quarantine. And then you ask who else they've been, where else they've been. And then you repeat the process by asking the next set of people to quarantine and ask them where they've been. And that's very labor intensive and slow, and it lags behind the virus. So it's usually not the best way of doing things. However, there is the form of digital contact tracing where essentially you instead have your phone track your location for you, and then it automatically does this process. But of course, there's been a lot of resistance to that since people are concerned about their privacy and whether the government or various evil organizations or corporations or whatever could use that against them. So there's another form of contact tracing that doesn't track your location, but tracks your exposures more directly by using things like Bluetooth or ultrasound to determine how close you are to other phones and whether you're closer than 6 feet or not. It can tell you whether you've been exposed or whether you haven't been exposed without ever tracking anything about you, like your location or your identity. Uses cryptography and lots of clever mathematics and system design essentially to make sure that the information can reach you, but no information can be extracted from you. And this is the baseline message for figuring out whether for the next generation of contact tracing apps. However, the Novid app is one step beyond that, in that it has various other beneficial features like being ahead of the virus instead of keeping pace with it, in that you can see, for example, whether like person 3 links away from you has the virus, and whether like you should start preparing accordingly for the possibility that it turns out that person 2 links away from you or 1 link away from you is diagnosed with the virus. Because the other apps can only do it when there's one infection 1 link away from you. But if we can do 3 links, that means we can stay ahead of the virus. And that is essentially the difference between the old methods of contact tracing, the new methods of contact tracing, and the next generation method of contact tracing available by Novid.
Right, and actually I just want to emphasize that the benefit of having the extra distance is, so it is true, there's this normal contact tracing, there's the first generation, there's this generation of contact tracing apps that the whole world is using, and then there's what we made, which is the next level up. And to draw an analogy, the best analogy is, imagine you lived in South Carolina on the edge, like on the coast. Today, you would watch the radar. During hurricane season, you'd see if there's a hurricane on the way. And if you see a hurricane on the way from several days out, you do something about it and you save your life. 200 years ago, there wasn't that. Actually, the history is very interesting. 200 years ago, life on the coast was occasionally you just wake up and you just die. I mean, that's just like what it was. And today we take it as granted that of course there's a satellite. Of course you see the hurricane coming. By the way, that's what we've just done for COVID. Before this, the way you deal with COVID is you wander around having no idea who has it or whatever. Occasionally people get struck, and as they get struck, then somehow something happens. But because of that, everyone shuts everything down and we have these awful ways of living. And what we're putting forward is there's a fundamentally different way to approach all of this. Tell everybody how far away it is. It's equivalent to that hurricane satellite. It's like whoever invented the hurricane satellite, now we think it's obvious. But back then people were like, what is this thing, right? So that's what this is about. And actually the privacy is really important. What Jung just showed is that there's all these things where people care about privacy. But you can actually do all of this stuff without using personal information. It's just that most other companies are trying to sell something. They want to sell your personal information. But that's not what we exist for.
Thank you so much. I think I had actually seen Sachi's and Justin's hand before Jung, so you guys go ahead. Sachi, do you want to go first?
Yeah, thank you so much for coming in and showing us everything about your app. I just have a few questions. So you mentioned that, you know, your app kind of flips the incentive structure for people downloading it, kind of saying like, oh, well, I'm protecting myself, so I can decide if I'm going to be safe or not today, depending on the number of COVID cases. So my question is, you know, do you expect or have you seen kind of the opposite intended effect happening where people decide due to the data on the app that the risk is low, so then they perform risky activities?
So that's a really great point. What we do is we definitely advise everyone that this does not mean that there's nothing there. It's this, the analogy we use is when you drive, that mirror on the right side, you know, what is it called? Passenger side mirror. It has blind spots. If you don't see a car in that mirror, that doesn't mean you should go and merge right. At the same time, it also has something emblazoned on it that says objects in mirror are closer than they appear. That's the same thing here because of the situation that not everything is reported in the app, right? There are some people not using the app. So the important thing is that anywhere that we're deploying this, the communication is the app is only telling you that there's something there. It's not telling you everything that's there. But we actually haven't seen situations of that. Actually, it's quite the contrary. Actually, let me show you something that happened at Georgia Tech. Let me just quickly share this this tab. Georgia Tech. This is kind of fun. So this shows what the app. This is actually why the app is powerful. Where am I? Let me go back to Zoom. Go here. I'm going to share a window. Right. So this is Georgia Tech, and Georgia Tech on their Reddit, somebody was posting about what they thought of the app. This was a month ago, and something happened to me. Did that stop sharing? I'm going to try it again. Hello again. Okay, so I'm here. Let's get rid of this thing. Right, so the Georgia Tech student was actually quite excited. They said something pretty interesting. They said the charts are unbelievable. I mean, that's actually what we're about. We want to give people information. And now let me go here to the screenshot that they got, because the whole point was to link everything. This is what the person saw. Georgia Tech's population is about 25,000 undergraduates, I believe. And so this particular snapshot was very, very early on in the deployment. And that person said they have 1,000 connections already. But the reason why it's interesting, I'm scrolling up, the reason why it's interesting is because it shows you how many people you're connected to at various distances. So for example, what that person just shared about on Reddit was they have 2 roommates. And so they are connected to the 2 roommates. This is not how many people are positive, or else they'll be freaking out. But this is just saying like how effectively it connects everybody. Because their 2 roommates spent time with 3 people. And that's why there's 3 people at degree 2. And then those 3 people spent time with 20 other people. And then soon it just connected out to campus. And the value of this is that when there are positive cases coming in, then they'll get to see it on their radar. We consider this like the radar, because if one of these 379 people at distance 7 turns positive, then their red chart, which is the thing I showed you earlier, would have a blip in the radar at distance 7. But when we talk about whether or not this gives a false sense of security, what we tell people is if your radar is too small, then you shouldn't believe there's nothing there. You see, that's why we show the blue chart. The blue chart says, do you have 1,000 people in your network you're connected to? If you only have 5 people you're connected to, and it says there's nothing there, there's nothing there. But what's really relevant is how many people are you linked to in this whole community? And of them, how many are positive? And we actually have heard that people change their behavior positively on the basis of seeing this sort of stuff.
Got it.
Actually, one thing we'd really be interested in doing is, if you can tell, we take this also as a research thing. So if we were deploying at UCLA, we would be deeply involved, not in the sense of being spooky, in the sense that we're actually just trying to help. And the level of effort that we put to any deployment is far beyond just saying, here, have this app. Because for us, our reputation is on the line. Every single place we deploy, if they get shut down, we look bad.
Okay, got it. I have a couple questions, but let me just follow up because I think you bring up a good point. You know, I'm like really glad that we're able to be here and listen to you speak and like have you explain this all, but you know, we can't even get all UCLA students to watch a mandatory training. So how are we going to get students to understand how to use this app? Like, how are we going to get them to understand that just because they don't have anyone on their radar, but they have 1,000 connections, you know, do you have any strategies from Georgia Tech or other schools, or how do you plan to implement that?
Yeah, so actually first of all, of course you can't get all of UCLA on a call, that never happens. As you can see, there's strategy of using Reddit, there's strategy of working on the social medias. Like when Georgia Tech rolled out, the central school Instagram actually also got me involved onto some of these things. We're actually really open with showing that we are scientists. I mean, we're happy to talk to people, we're happy to answer these questions. There's no skeletons that we're afraid of hiding. So we're happy to answer all of these things. But the real way that it blew up is because the Undergraduate Student Association, well, what is it? Yeah, the Student Association at Georgia Tech endorsed it. I mean, they and the student newspaper they both actually thought this was a great idea. And that was interesting because originally it was the administration that found it. But once the student body figured out what this thing was, it's actually directly in their interest. We saw people posting on Reddit. We saw Georgia Tech students posting on Reddit to other Georgia Tech students saying, hey, let's get on this system because then we can actually hope to have some life. Like the funny thing about this is the exact opposite of something to restrict you. This is something to try to make it so that the whole place can stay open and that you can participate in some things in a way where you still, you know, you get a sense of your own risk. I think, so what I'm trying to say is that's where the alignment of incentives was so important. Once you align incentives, then suddenly it's not just about mandatory training. Another way that some people looked at this was, again, UCLA had nice-ish new dorms when I was around there. But in some universities, there are really awful quarantine dorms that you just don't want to go to. I don't know if UCLA has that situation, but if you had a place called the quarantine zone that no one wants to go to, this is the app to help you avoid that. And I'm not kidding. Because what this means is that you would get to see something coming, and so that you avoid having like 14 days in some horrible prison, you actually would just install the darn app. And that's also where the blue chart's useful. By being able to see that you're connected, now you know the app's working. Sorry, I just keep talking.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a good explanation. I have another question, but I'll just say that, like USAC is one of many entities at UCLA. Georgia Tech is a huge school, but UCLA is bigger. And I think that, if this were to be implemented, it's going to require the endorsement of a lot of different entities like Greek Life, Residential Life, a lot of different places. But before I get there, I want to just go back to a more specific question about the app. So can you tell us like how precise the geographic data is? Like what precision of geographic unit will you be kind of notifying people up to? You were saying that like it says, you have 2 roommates and then your roommates have those 3 connections, whatever. But like, will it tell you, will it show you when people in your apartment building have been in your range of connection, or will it only show up to your block? Like what's that level?
Okay, so there's a very important thing, which is that we don't operate based on absolute location. It doesn't matter what is your zip code or your address or even physically where you are. You could be on the moon, and the moon has no GPS coordinates because it keeps orbiting the Earth. But what I mean is that we just work in relative distances. So when there's 2 phones that are both running the app, means both have the app installed, and they kind of come within certain distance relative to each other, then they detect automatically that their distance from each other was some number, and that's what's stored. Now, the important thing is that's why it doesn't matter about your apartment building. If you decide to go and sleep over somewhere else, it's basically just you. The way you're catching a disease is that it's you. Now, when you're talking about distances, let me tell you the 3 ways that we measure distance. We have one way, which is by ultrasound. That's actually the hyper accurate one. And it works if you have an Android phone and you're measuring distance to another Android phone. It's getting a bit into the technical weeds. It's because of limitations of various operating systems and what they let you do. But whenever we're able to do an ultrasonic distance measurement, the accuracy on that, if we go and tell you it was at most 8 feet 2 inches, that's basically right. It's like off by a foot max. And that we use that one for these exposure notifications. The thing that John showed earlier of people saying, hey, you've actually been exposed to a positive case. We will only tell you that if we know with ultrasonic confirmation, which is very different from those other apps that are being deployed elsewhere. Those other apps are going to be telling you that you've been exposed, and the chance that you've been exposed might not even be 100% because they can't measure accurately. It is actually well known that if you use Bluetooth to measure distance, there was some study done by some researchers in Ireland. They used it on a bus, and they found out that using the Bluetooth measurement gave as much accuracy as randomly picking people on the bus. So you may have heard about the fact that Bluetooth just simply doesn't work for distance measurement. And that's why for us, when we go and say, yeah, you might need to quarantine, we only use ultrasound. But that's not what our app is really for. We don't care about that quarantine part as much. It's just that that part somehow gets administration to think that the app seems to be doing what they're thinking about. What we're really thinking about is how to help every student have that network of these relationships to know what to avoid. Now, suddenly for that, what we do is we use the ultrasound if it's within 30 feet, or we use the Bluetooth if it's also within like 30 feet. But the Bluetooth penetrates walls, so you'd actually get a blob around you, right? Or if you're connected to the same Wi-Fi network, but for 3 hours. When I say network, I mean, the same Wi-Fi access point. And if you look on campus, it's not like there's one access point for the whole math sciences building, right? It's like tons of them all through the hallways. This is all designed to make it so that if you've legitimately been with someone else for about, within about 30 feet for at least like 15 minutes or whatever, then that makes the connection. And that is what lets you get this early warning. And the early warning is supposed to give you more warnings, not less. Actually, to the point that you raised before, we don't really want false negatives now. We actually are more afraid. We're afraid of false negatives. So we give you more stuff. But for example, if you were living in this apartment, I lived on Kelton Avenue, but if you lived in an apartment on Kelton Avenue and then there was somebody else, just like on the next street over, you wouldn't be connected to them.
Got it. Thank you so much for explaining that. That makes
Sure.
a lot more sense. Just really quickly, last question. So for the Wi-Fi access point portion of that, does that also apply to like private Wi-Fi access points, or is that only for like on-campus public ones?
It's all Wi-Fi access points, but what it does is it's actually because, again, this is technical detail, but if you run an iPhone, you may have noticed that Apple has a lot of restrictions on what you're allowed to do. It's called in the background. You can't have 5 apps running at the same time on an iPhone. They want that so the apps feel faster. And so we aren't able to do our normal stuff in the background. So in order to support iPhones better, we're not constantly, it's like every 15 minutes, we're checking what's the Wi-Fi access point you're connected to? And we don't store that. We have a way that uses math to cryptographically make it so that we can't know what is the Wi-Fi access point fingerprint you're connected to, other than we make it possible to check whether 2 people are on the same one. So effectively, all we know is that these 2 devices were on the same Wi-Fi access point, like the physical thing, for at least 3 hours, but we don't know which one it was. We don't know whether it was the one in your house or the one that was on campus.
Awesome, thanks. Sachi, is that all your questions?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Sure. I love questions, actually.
Awesome. Okay, so I put in the chat that the queue is Justin, Christina, and Aiden, but I also wanted to remind folks to be conscious of the time because we have a lot of stuff left on the agenda.
Yeah, sorry, my questions are pretty quick. So far in this presentation, you've done a lot to convince me that the cryptography is pretty solid. I think I guess I would have to look at the code, but you said that, and I think the random sending of messages is really clever. I am wondering, is there any amount of time where, I guess, information like your, Wi-Fi access point or phones you're in proximity with, any sort of identifiable data would be on whatever your servers you're running Novit on? Is there any backdoor, or it's solely using these random codes, right?
Yes, I mean, we would get killed if we were. We'd get killed if we were doing anything else, right? So the way that, if you actually want to know exactly what's going on, so whenever we have these phones talking to each other, if you're in public, the phones have IDs that are not your phone number and they're not your hardware ID number. We make an ID for you when you install the app. It's just like freshly made. You don't give it your phone number, give it nothing. It just makes an ID number. Now, that ID number, you don't even get told. And that's for your protection, so that if the campus police showed up and said, tell me your ID number, you'd say, I can't tell you, right? So now what happens is as you're walking around in public, the phone makes a random other fake ID number and tells everyone else, that's who I am. But it tells us, the server, hey, I just used this alter ego, but I'm really this person. And then the server figures it out. But you see, that's not anything about your phone. And with the Wi-Fi thing, we have an anonymization method that we actually will never store the fingerprint of your Wi-Fi access point. We just make up a random number that represents it instead. So I know this is pretty technical. So if you're curious at all, you're welcome to write to me afterwards.
Yeah, maybe I'll reach out to you or something. And it's completely open source, right?
No, and actually there's a reason why it's not. No, there's a reason why it's not. The reason why it's not is that people always ask us about that. Actually, the way we work is when Georgia Tech wanted to roll it out, we agreed with Georgia Tech, yeah, they can look at our source code under an NDA. So they can look at it to whatever they wanted, and they confirmed it was fine. But the reason why we don't open source it is because if we did, actually there are plenty of other companies in the world which would use the whole technology we have and make a privacy invasive version. We have the world's most advanced system, and I'm just a crazy guy who says I refuse to make the privacy invasive system, even though we've been told we could make like billions of dollars on that. Because the companies want to buy it.
I'm definitely
but I don't want that to happen because that would be a terrible world. So I'm just holding this code hostage, basically, and nobody else gets it, but we make it this way.
Okay, so I guess the second question, kind of the same thing. Overall, it's like, what is the ask you have of us? Because I'm imagining for this app to work, you need a critical mass of people either having this app or similar kind of apps, right? And so I guess from that other question, I was wondering, like, are you looking to have a similar agreement you made with Georgia Tech with UCLA?
Yes. So the way that this will work, because there are these red signals of positive tests, it will not work if random people say it's midterms, I don't want to take my midterm, bam, 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 positive, positive. No, that's not how it can do it. So it has to go up and it has to be integrated with the university's contact tracing system. Actually, that sounds hard, it's really trivial. It's that there's a human being who's in charge of knowing every positive case on campus. And that person would just need to have access to a dashboard we give them where they don't tell us anything about who they're giving these special codes to, but they can get a purple button that they press, they get a code. They give the code to the person that just tested positive to put into their app. So it would actually need to be a university-used system. So what we're looking to do by talking to you, and I'm totally cool with there being lots of organizations on campus. In fact, actually the Greek life community might actually like what we're doing, because what we're doing might let them have more of the life that they're used to having, in a way where at least you don't have these diseases blowing up out of control. So we are totally happy with getting multiple major groups on campus of students interested in this. And the ask is to go up to central admin and say, you know, we actually have, I mean, you guys would have to help tell them, you found the next generation system. And we would like UCLA to use this system. And then that would get central admin to talk to us. So basically we want to help you. That's what this is.
Thanks, Justin. Oh, Naomi's back.
Justin, was that all your questions? Cool. Okay. Thank you, Emily, for always being such a great chair. Christina?
Hi, I have 3 questions, so hopefully they'll be quick. But the first question that I have is that I know with traditional contact tracing apps, I've seen research that says like over 50% towards like 60% of people have to have them downloaded in order for it to be effective. Do you have an idea of what percent would need to have it downloaded for this app?
Yes, so I estimated this to be about 10% for university applications, which is why we were very happy when Georgia Tech passed 10%. Now, actually, let me go and dive very deep into the thing you just talked about with 60%. That's wrong. Actually, all of the existing system will not work even at 100%. That's why I am working on this so hard. And that's actually why I'm really asking you. This is not so much of a thing where I just want to help you just because, you know, it's like, we need to save the world, darn it. Like, actually, what I just told you earlier is that the entire system that's being deployed at UC San Diego, which is based on this Google Apple system, where they will tell you that you've been exposed, but the probability that you're actually infectious could be 10% or less. The moment people figure this out, they will completely ignore the entire system. And then we'll have basically wasted $100 million worldwide implementing in every state and every country a system which is limited by biology. You see, again, this is like me looking at the science of it. The 10% thing, that's not a technology limitation. It's just the characteristics of the transmission of COVID-19. No matter what tech you make, if the whole system you're making, if the entire framework is around, oh, got 6 feet, 15-minute contact, tell them to quarantine. Look, the probability that you're infectious is 10, the probability you got it is less than 10%. No tech's gonna fix that. So actually the thing you quoted was 60%. I actually think that's bogus. And in fact, not only is that bogus, I have a scientific article I'll share with some of you if you're curious, but that's basically taking apart the entire principle of all of the digital apps that are out there. And now what do we need? Well, you see, the reason why we're more robust is because we're not trying to put out a forest fire by stamping out every bit of the forest fire. Right, when you have the forest fire going around, why they need so many people to have it installed and to use it is because if there's some patch that keeps burning, it just burns. Our way of stopping a forest fire is to give all the trees eyes and legs. It's a very strange analogy, but that's exactly what we're doing. If you gave all the trees in the forest eyes and legs, not everyone needs it. Maybe if 10% of the trees take their eyes and legs, those 10% will see like some burning stuff from far away. And even if you don't see all the burning stuff, you just get the heck out of there. So the way that our system is designed, at 10%, which we know from Georgia Tech's installation situation, at 10% you get the 1,000 people in the big cluster. So now you suddenly have these people who are protecting each other. And even if not everyone's on the system, when you get the fire coming, you still see there's like some burning red dots, if that sort of makes sense. So this 10% thing, I should be careful. 10% is like what you need before people are like, oh, wow, got critical mass. If you want to be maximally effective, of course, get more is better. But, and I actually don't know what you would really need if you wanted to use this as your only method to stop the virus. But what you need to get critical mass is 10%, which is actually quite easy.
I guess this isn't one of my 3 questions, but this is a separate thing that I'm wondering, which is that you brought up that this is part of like research that you're doing, right? And you said that you have something that's gonna be published. So I'm wondering if this is something that's being like researched and kind of like peer reviewed, because I think the 60% one as far as I know, those ones have been kind of thoroughly researched, and like that's the conclusions that they've drawn. So I don't know if you want to speak on that a little bit.
Oh, sure. So what I'm talking about is this is preprint, right? So the thing that I have that I've written, actually what is going on is that I've been circulating it around the other experts that I know to get feedback, but it definitely has not been peer reviewed. On the other hand, the latest article that said that Google's system would be effective at 15%, that one has not been peer reviewed. So what I want to say is like there have been, but at the same time that got cited a ton. And the way that this world is working right now is because of the PR budgets and the needs of people to justify their state spending. People have been elevating this other non-peer reviewed paper. And the reason why I put my thing out is because I mean, I can tell you what's wrong with it. There was a paper, I'll tell you what's wrong with it. The paper that estimates that 15% adoption is enough, if you read the paper carefully, inside it, it says they will assume that if you're told to quarantine for 14 days, the chance that you will do that is 90%. So I invite you to think for yourself. If you were told anonymously in a non-enforceable way that there's a 10% chance that you are positive, and you're told to please quarantine for 14 days, what fraction of the UCLA population, if there's no enforcement, completely anonymous, no one knows any identity, you have a less than 10% chance you're positive? Is it 90% of people who are quarantined for 14 days? Is it even 9%? so that's actually what I'm going for here. So ultimately, yes, there's this peer review thing. We don't have that stage yet. On the other hand, the way I've tried to do everything is here are just some facts, and people can think about the facts too.
Christina, does that answer your question?
I think so.
But I'm going to just flat out say it. My stuff that I'm saying, it has not been peer reviewed. Just to give you a flat answer, it has not. But at the same time, I'm very happy to talk about it with anyone who wants to discuss these things. Because as I said, we're not trying to hide anything.
I guess if you have the app that tells people when they've been in contact and you wouldn't necessarily trust them to quarantine after that, why would it be different in this situation where it's an app that tells them that they have a connection who's had a connection with someone who has tested positive, kind of thing?
It's because the ask is different. The ask of quarantining for 14 days is very different from the ask of make sure you're wearing a mask when you go to that party. You see, what I'm actually trying to say here is that, okay, I should be very careful because this is being recorded. And so I'm going to tell you flat, I'm not encouraging people to go to parties, right? But practically speaking, if there was a party, if you have a party and everyone is actually wearing a mask, that in fact decreases your probability of transmission by a lot. And the situation is, if you don't know to do that, then you can have massive transmission at some kind of a party where there happened to be someone who's positive and you just didn't know it. Like imagine that somehow everyone went to some garden and had a party and nobody knew that there was some positive person at that garden having a party. And then somehow, like, what do you know? Everyone gets it. But if for some reason they actually had the app before they went to that garden to have the party, they might have seen that there's something coming. And when they see something coming, they might have worn masks to that party. And then suddenly you might not have had that many people infected from it. So I know that some people will not care about the virus and they'll just get sick anyway. And that's all you can do. But the ask of just protecting yourself a little bit more, it's very interesting that if you just protect yourself a little bit more at the right time, it can make a huge impact.
Thank you for that. Christina, do you have any more questions?
I'm sorry. Yes, I have two other questions. Those ones were not okay. I was just
Christina,
okay. So first of all, I was wondering. I'm sorry.
Before you go, I just wanted to say that what you just brought up, Professor, that really reminds me of a lot of the work that we're trying to do right now with like social pods, kind of taking like a realistic approach that of course we want students to stay inside. Of course, we don't want parties to happen, but the reality is that they're happening. And like you said, it's all about the timing and like knowing when not to go out and when it is safe to. So like, I guess, thank you for that perspective. Go ahead, Christina.
I was just wondering also, because I know that another concern with the other app also is kind of like one aspect of the privacy concerns is being able to kind of like figure out exactly who in your network has been infected. And I was wondering if you think that this is like, what's your thoughts on that? Because if it's kind of a connections thing, it seems like it might be easier to triangulate who the person is in the network versus just having a notification that says you have been exposed to a person without the connections part of it.
Yeah, actually, you have a very good point. I mean, in some sense, right? If everyone sees how far away the connection was, then somehow people will kind of figure, not will kind of figure out, you could just like start surveying people and be like, hey, is there anyone I know who's closer, who's closer, who's closer, and then go and guess, right? But actually that's not that different from the other situation, other than just there are more people who are hunting. What I mean is that if you are told that it's at distance 3 from you, there's a lot of people there. The only thing is if you find out that it's at distance 1 from you, then there's something. But actually, again, I like to be upfront. Here's something you could do. You'd be like, it's at distance 3 from you. You ask all your friends, like, who saw the thing at distance 2? You go to that person and say, who saw the thing at distance 1? Right? And you go and find out, oh, okay, so that this person's at distance 1 from the person who got, who just got, who reported positive. I would say that's true, but actually with the normal contact tracing that's going to happen anyway in your university, and with the way that the other apps work, the other app would still tell the people around distance 1, and you'd still get the rumor of, hey, I got an exposure notification, I was within distance 1. Who else was within distance 1? And then you pretty soon find out that these 5 people were within distance 1, and you kind of guess who it was. I think what I'm saying is that you have those issues both ways. Ours, you indeed would find out, more people would find out that there's positive cases, but most likely, I think that hopefully shouldn't be as much of an issue just because of how ambiguous it is once you get to a distance of 3 in a dense college environment. Like there were 20 people in that previous one.
Okay, thank you. And then my third question is also unrelated to the first two, sorry. It's, so you brought up that Androids can use ultrasound, which is a lot more precise versus Bluetooth, which I saw the same thing that you did about the buses not being very accurate. And then also using, like you were gonna suggest using like the Wi-Fi. So I'm wondering if the kind of like the 10% number and the accuracy numbers change in the context that if quite a few people have iPhones and a much smaller percentage have Android phones.
Yeah, we know that on campus, a lot of people have iPhones. And in fact, that's why we designed our system in that way. Actually, maybe 3 months ago, we cared a lot more about the accuracy because 3 months ago, we were trying to do the old paradigm of telling people if they had been exposed. And that's when I had the idea that, wait, we should just flip the whole paradigm, tell everyone how far away it is. And once you have flipped to the tell everyone how far away it is, it's actually still useful to know that there's someone who's distance 3 away. And what that might mean is it could be in your apartment block, there's somebody who works in some office and then they took a class with somebody else, right? But it's like maybe it wasn't your roommate, but it's still relevant to you. And this is sort of to Sachi's point. This just makes people a little bit more cautious. I mean, even if you found out that there was somebody in your apartment block who got COVID, you might still be a little bit like, oh, maybe I should be a little bit more careful. I'm trying to say that level of information, that level of precision, we found to still be useful. Is that somehow, even though I don't see the person every day, they're sort of close to me. And then if it's like that person's classmate, I would rather know rather than not know. But it's not perfect. I mean, we can't make it perfect. No one in the world has solved the problem. Well, I should say this. We could make it perfect if Apple let us, but Apple has some rules that say only Apple is able to use certain features on their phone at all times. And we're not Apple.
Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Sure.
Awesome. Aiden, if you don't mind, can I ask my question before? Okay. So yeah, given that UCLA has had its bouts with, I guess, like increasing security or attempts to like increase surveillance, i.e. like the facial recognition technology policy that tried to be implemented last year, what would you say to students who have like EDI concerns and who would be afraid that this is another mechanism to like surveil Black and Brown communities, which we know are stopped more often, targeted more often, especially within like the realm of like contact tracing?
Yeah, I think the way I would say this is that it helps that Georgia Tech did a review of the source code and they went and said, they have a public website that says this thing doesn't collect information about you. Their thing says they reviewed a previous version of it. They haven't had the time to review the latest version of it. But it doesn't actually collect that information about you, so that's not the issue, right? I think the main thing is if you're thinking about surveillance where it's really trying to capture information about individuals is completely different from something which is just like telling you whether you've been around other people And what UCLA would get, we would actually give them an administrative dashboard that tells them aggregate information. But because I don't even know like what each individual user ID corresponds to, we have no way of like saying who it is. I think that if you're comparing all of this face recognition cameras, this is a totally different level. But again, I think that the trust is important. And the way that we deal with this is if there are groups which are not trusting, I'd invite them to chat. I mean, the thing is that we're not like some amorphous, weird organization. We have the ability to explain what's going on.
Yeah, I definitely understand that they're two different things, but like you said, it's like about trust. And I guess the reality is that students, especially marginalized students on campus, don't have that existing trust that administration is doing everything in their power to protect them. So I guess that frame, that lens is important to like look through, and that's one that we try to look through.
Yeah, I would say that a way to help with this is that this is not even just like some random vendor which is trying to sell a particular product, a bunch of facial recognition things to UCLA. We built something for which if your student went to Atlanta for vacation or whatever and walked next to a Georgia Tech student, it's the same app. What I mean is this is an international system. Anyone who uses the Novid system is using the same system. So it's less of UCLA is bringing us in to make something for UCLA. It's more of, thank you, UCLA, for joining the system. And at that point, it's not about UCLA surveillance. That's what I'm saying. What I will say, we expose ourselves to that. It's like people should be asking us, is Po Shen Lo, is he the guy who's trying to do surveillance and work negatively towards people from marginalized communities? And if you ask us, what we'll say is, honestly, our app is going to be the biggest help ever to marginalized communities because it provides this completely anonymous way for them to be able to protect themselves, which is far more private than waiting for the government contact tracers to come for you. If you compare this to what Zhang said at the beginning, what's actual contact tracing? I don't know if they're doing it at UCLA, but they do it everywhere else. Once there's a positive case, somebody calls you up and asks you, who were you around?
Right.
And so this is the opposite. And so actually what I anticipate would happen is I anticipate marginalized communities are getting hit really hard by COVID because they may not necessarily want or get as comfortable telling this person everything about who they just spent their time with and when. On the other hand, if they use our app instead, you don't have to go and tell any government person. And so our hope is that the truth of it is we're actually the better option for anyone who doesn't believe the government. We just need to do the communication right. And that's where we would hope that if we worked with you, and if you came to understand us well enough, we could actually work together on that communication side.
Thank you. And then our last question of the night, just because we are low on time, or we like extended way past time. Aiden?
Yeah, I had a few, but I guess I'll try to limit it. Really illuminating, really appreciate you coming and explaining this. I guess I'm just trying to get a better sense of, I know you've used the, what's the university in Georgia? Remind me again. Georgia Tech. So Georgia Tech, you've cited as an example. Were there any other campuses or communities you're launching in, or was that the primary example?
Well, that was the first one, right? So then after that, Carnegie Mellon University, which is in fact where I teach, we're also there, but it's still in the process of bringing on students, right? So Georgia Tech did it right at the beginning because Atlanta, Georgia was in a tough situation with regard to COVID. Carnegie Mellon has been lucky because we generally don't have many cases. So somehow it wasn't as important, but we are doing this now because the fall season is likely to bring in flu and possibly will bring in a second wave of COVID. And the next university that we've just launched at is called Grand Valley State University. That's in Michigan. It's a large public institution. Again, I think around like 25,000-ish students. Not as large as UCLA, but that one that's fresh. And so what we're doing right now is as we roll out in each place, we actually are contributing. We don't just do the app because as I told you, that's our reputation. If the school shuts down, we look terrible. And so what we have to do is we have people who are helping to contact student groups. That's why I'm on this call, right? We want to talk to all kinds of student groups to be able to let people understand what this is about. And we're in the state right now of getting those things ramped up at Carnegie Mellon and at Grand Valley State.
And then I guess my other question is, so when, going back to Georgia Tech, when the Student Association kind of endorsed this app, what did it look like? I guess, what was the statement? Was it urging the university to make this mandatory for students? Was it encouraging students to voluntarily sign up for the app? What was kind of the ask that their student association made of their student body?
Voluntary, and that's a very important detail.
Okay, that's good to know. And then I guess just my final question, I've been grateful that you've talked a lot about kind of the privacy protections in place and the way that it's built into the app. But I mean, should there be a hypothetical where, whether it's a lawsuit or court order or something, you're mandated to disclose data to somebody, whether it be the government, whether it be the school, et cetera, kind of what would that process look like? What do you actually store, and what would you be able to give if compelled to, and what things have you built a way to not give data?
Yes, of course. And again, this is because I'm a mathematician. We like proofs. So the way that I do this, the way that we did this, is that every device has a random ID. If you get that random ID, you have no idea what actual device it was. It's not a phone number, it's not an email address, it's nothing, random ID. The database that we keep centrally says this ID, that ID, the time, 8:29 p.m., the date, whatever day is today, I forgot already, and the distance, like 5 meters. So we have this huge database that says ID number 62,470 whatever thousand was next to ID number 200,300 whatever, at whatever distance, whatever time. We've got this huge thing. So the government can do whatever they, good luck. This is what I mean. So even the thing about the Wi-Fi, that's why we anonymize it. We never store your Wi-Fi's fingerprint. Every Wi-Fi base station has a fingerprint. It's called a MAC address for the Wi-Fi base station. None of those are stored in our database. Instead, what actually happens is whenever we want to store a Wi-Fi fingerprint, we have another computer which serves as an anonymizer, where you can send it a Wi-Fi fingerprint, and for the next 30 minutes, it's going to give you the same answer. It's basically like, give me the current alter ego for this Wi-Fi fingerprint, and out comes something. Half an hour later, the thing that comes out is different. But we never store which fingerprints corresponded to those like temporary things. And instead, in our database, we just store those temporary things. Why? It's because for that purpose of figuring out if two people were on the same Wi-Fi, we can use the temporary thing. We're just checking if they're equal. We're just checking if these temporary like alter egos for the Wi-Fis are equal to each other. So if you look at our database, you can't see a single Wi-Fi access point fingerprint. They just aren't there. So instead, what everyone would get is like this big mass of, oh, these users were next to those users. Some of these are part of a community. We actually usually work in a way where UCLA would make its own community. People can opt in to join. All that does is it means that you have an extra label that says you're a UCLA person out of the 10,000 UCLA members. But beyond that, it's like, here are distances and times of interactions. It is true that if you use enough computers, you might be able to figure out some stuff, but it is not easy.
And then actually, I had one last question that I thought of. So the other thing that I guess is just kind of, we want to make sure we're doing our due diligence and with this app, if we're recommending support for it, is just, I mean, the environments in which it's been launched in Carnegie Mellon and Georgia Tech are, I guess, kind of, it seems to be a very different campus environments than, say, UCLA, where a much larger, more urban campus. And then also just I guess, kind of the culture around privacy in California is a bit more stringent. We have the strongest privacy laws in the nation. And our student body is just coming out of another year where privacy was a major concern with the security camera framework, the facial recognition framework that Naomi mentioned. So I guess, like, how would you tailor your strategy to really, really building trust with the UCLA student body and with our community? Like, what would you approach our campus differently? Because for us, the stakes are, I think, a bit higher if we're recommending support.
Sure, and I apologize, I had to charge my computer, which is why I just got a tour of my house. Yeah, so what I would say is that the stakes are definitely higher, but at the same time, when you think about what this is absorbing in terms of data, it is far less than most of the apps that people are using anyway. So once you start to do that comparison, you find out, like, what, you have all of these different apps that you use on your phone, and they're actually collecting a lot of information. If you go and send a selfie, you know how much information is in that, right? So the way that we do this is, actually, the claim is, it does take some information, but it gives you a direct value. And the reason why there has been so much opposition, in my analysis, is why the opposition to all of these apps, which are the other contact tracing ones, is because there's nothing in it for you. All of the other contact tracing ones are apps that protect others from you if you ever get sick. And then people are like, well, I don't want, they come up with all kinds of reasons. We made the first app that protects you from others. We have the opposite situation where people, if you tell people, here's an app that can tell you if COVID is coming, there's a decent number of people who scratch their chin and say, hey, I think I want this thing. And so the difference is, if people are looking for an excuse to not install something, it's because the thing might not have been what they wanted in the first place. We've made something directly and eminently useful that, actually, I'll go even further, I'll say a crazy statement. But if everybody installed this app, you could potentially even go back to complete normal. I'm actually not kidding. It's like if everybody, but of course that's never going to happen. But if everybody actually installed this thing, and you could just see if COVID was getting closer to you, the rule would just be, if you see COVID get within 3 of you, just get careful. But right now, the reason we can't do that is because we have no idea where COVID is. So we just shut everything down. So my point is, again, it's about the value prop. And so what we are trying to do here is just to wake the world up, to let the world know there is something else out there. And we would love if UCLA students got on this thing and said, hey, like, it's basically truth to power. What we are fighting against right now, I'll tell you, we're fighting against trillion-dollar companies who have plans to push out the things that they've made because that's what they've made and that's their PR. But they're wrong. And unfortunately, you've never heard about this. You never saw this on the news. We've talked to tons of journalists, and people have said, well, unless it's what the Apple and Google people are making, we don't want to cover it. So like all of these arguments I've just told you about, most people don't even know. And hopefully, if people start to find out what's really going on under here, then they'll start to think, what's worth it? You can use this app here, which will share all kinds of personal information, but you want to use it. I'm talking about other apps. And then when you compare it to Novid, I would argue that Novid is significantly more valuable than following the UCSD bandwagon to go onto a particular Google Apple exposure notification system. I'm not sure I really answered your question, but what I'm trying to say is it's actually a hard thing to explain unless you have a value that you're offering.
No, yeah, it answered my question. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, I took up so much of your time.
No, thank you so much for being so patient with our questions and coming here tonight. We really, really appreciate it. So thank you.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And I wish you all the best. Take care.
You too. Have a great rest of your night.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, everyone. We can go ahead and move on into appointments now. Sachi has a handful of consent appointments, so I'll just let you take over.
Yes, hello. Hold up, let me get my notes. Okay, I believe the first appointment is Brittany to TSAB. Sorry, I don't have the agenda up. Is that correct? I'm gonna assume that's correct because that's the order I wrote it in. Okay, cool. I will introduce Brittany. So Brittany is a 5th-year history and labor studies double major. Brittany has a lot of experience with commuting and has a dedication to raising student voices on campus, which makes her a perfect candidate for the Transportation Services Advisory Board. She also served on TSAB last year, and she supported the graduate initiative for a universal transit pass for graduate students, and she's now advocating for the same for undergraduates. So I'm very confident in her ability to represent the student body on TSAB.
And Emily had to step out, so I'm filling in as chair for right now. But if you're ready, you can go ahead and give your opening statement.
Oh, wait, I think it's just a consent, so she shouldn't have to.
Okay,
yeah.
never mind. Do we do anything?
You just say like,
help.
Any opposition, and then.
Okay, is there any opposition? Seeing none, okay, I think we can move on, right?
Yes.
Thank you,
So,
Sasha.
seeing none, the appointment is approved.
Okay, seeing none, the appointment is approved.
Cool. All right. Next is Helen Sanchez to the John Wooden Board of Governors. Helen is a third-year BizEcon major and mathematics minor. She is passionate about space utilization and has experience in budget management, and thus I am very confident in her ability to serve as representative on the John Wooden Board of Governors.
And is there any opposition to this appointment? Seeing none, the appointment is approved.
All right. Next is Angelina Kient to the University Committee on Disability. Angelina is a second-year Public Affairs and HBS major with a double minor in Disability Studies and Global Studies. Wow. She emphasized her interest in community service and disability activism in her application, and I am very confident that Angelina will lead UCLA to becoming a more accommodating and accessible campus through UCOD.
And is there any opposition to this appointment? Seeing none, the appointment is approved.
All right, next is Samantha Bodger to the University Committee on Disability. Samantha is a second-year Public Affairs major with a minor in Disability Studies. She is a member of my office, our Access on Board project, and she has proven herself to be extremely proactive and determined when it comes to self-advocacy and shifting the burden of accommodation away from students and towards administration. So I am extremely confident that she will serve as an amazing appointment to the University Committee on Disability.
And is there any opposition to this appointment? Seeing none, this appointment is approved.
Great. Next, we have Alyssa Hemler to the University Committee on Disability. You all might know Alyssa. Alyssa is a third-year English major. She is our Access on Board project director within FAC, and she has shown herself to be such a strong, passionate advocate for students with disabilities and their intersectional needs. So, and Alyssa has had experience on UCOD as well, sitting in on some meetings already. So I know that she will make an impact on campus through UCOD.
And is there any opposition to this appointment? Seeing none, this appointment is approved.
And then now that I'm looking back, I accidentally skipped over Natalie Decker to UCOD. So let me just do that now. Natalie Decker is a fourth-year DESMA major with a minor in Disability Studies. As a graphic designer for the Disabled Student Union, Natalie has aimed to increase communication between admin and students to better provide for students with disabilities, and I think she will be an amazing appointment to the University Committee on Disability.
And is there any opposition to this appointment? Seeing none, this appointment is approved.
And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Sachi. Go ahead, David.
Hi, everyone. So first up, we have Ada Perez. She's a fourth-year transfer student, and she's been a part of FICOM for a year now. She's worked with us a great deal on improving our social presence last year. And this year, I'm just looking forward to working with her again so that we can take it further.
And is there any opposition to this appointment? And seeing none, this appointment is approved.
Okay, so our next appointment is Christine Tseng. Sorry, Christine, if I mispronounced that. She is a third year. She has been with FICOM for 2 years now, and she's been a great addition to the team. She works on auditing organizations, and I'm just looking forward to work with her again this year.
And is there any opposition to this appointment? Seeing none, this appointment is approved.
Okay, and then we have Josh Prentice. Josh Prentice joined us last year as a first year, so he's a second year now. He has been with FICOM for a year, and he also works on audits with Christine, and so I'm looking forward to working with him again this year.
And Naomi, did you want to take the chair back? I can keep
so well.
Didn't want to overstep, but go ahead.
Okay, you're doing great. Is there any opposition to this appointment? No? Okay, then they are appointed. Next one, David.
And then next we have Waylon. Waylon is also a third-year transfer. He has been FICOM. He's joined FICOM last year, and he's helped us a great deal with moving our apps online. I like to call him the Matrix Master because he kind of sets up our spreadsheet, which we call the Matrix. And so he's also been a great addition to the team, and I'm excited to be working with him again this year.
Cool. Waylon sounds really cool. Is there any opposition to Waylon's appointment? Great. If not, Waylon is appointed to the Finance Committee. I think that's it for now, David. Yeah, that is it. We'll do your vice chair appointment after the last action item, or consent item. Cool. Next, we have Fiona Pan to the Student Conduct Committee. Taylani, do you want to introduce her?
Yes. So Fiona has a passion for law and policy, and that definitely shined through in her interview. She holds numerous advocacy-related and policy-related positions in different student organizations like Active Minds and UCCRJ. Through her experiences, she has grown in her problem-solving skills and understands the importance of confidentiality. So we really enjoyed her interview, and we think that she would be a great fit for the Student Conduct Committee. So on that note, Fiona.
Cool. Awesome. Does anyone have any opposition to Fiona's appointment? Great. If not, Fiona is appointed to the Student Conduct Committee. Next, we have our action items. So just a reminder for any of the folks who are going to be interviewing today, the way that this will go is you will give a 1-minute introduction. Council will then ask you some questions. After that, you will give your 1-minute closing. ARC will give us their deliberation. We'll talk or not talk, and then we'll vote. So we will start with Jenny Wing to the Finance Committee for Vice Chair. David, do you want to introduce Jenny or speak to her a little bit before she introduces herself?
Yeah, definitely. So Jenny has been with FICOM for 2 years now. She's a genuinely nice and knowledgeable person. I'm excited for her appointment tonight because she's helped us in the past with emails. She also knows, a lot about the process between SGA and some requisition forms. And I really want to work with her to improve FICOM, to improve our app, and to also improve our outreach.
Great. Jenny, do you want to give your 1-minute introduction?
Yeah, of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Jenny. I've met some of you I haven't. I'm a third-year student, econ major, stats and accounting double minor. And like David said, I've been part of FICOM for the last 2 years since my freshman year, and I've honestly loved it. I think each year I'm constantly learning something new, but the biggest part is just being able to help students get the funding they need. Funding at UCLA is so confusing, and so I've been really grateful to be able to just make it a little easier to be able to talk to a student and show them this is where you can go. And I'm really looking forward to working with FICOM this year, hopefully as vice chair, and just like David said, continue to improve our processes, especially as we're transitioning to online, and figure out a way to include diversity and make it more equitable in terms of funding.
Awesome. Council members, do y'all have any questions for Jenny? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Okay, if not, Jenny, feel free to give your 1-minute closing.
Awesome. Not sure what else I can say, but I'm really excited to be part of a wonderful organization that can help support USAC and also be part of it for the students as well. I'm really excited to see what online initiatives all the clubs are having this year. Really excited to see how it's going to work. It's definitely strange, but probably will not be the last time this is happening, and really try to adapt our app and make it easier for everyone to access.
Thank you, Jenny. Ark?
Hello, ARC voted 3-0 for a positive recommendation on Jenny Wang. We really thought that her previous experience and her ideas for outreach and whatnot qualified her for the position, and we're excited to see you, sir.
Awesome. Anybody else from ARC want to give their thoughts? Cool. Well, if no one else has any other thoughts, or does anyone from council have any thoughts? Sorry. Okay, if not, a motion will suffice.
A motion to appoint Jenny Wang as Vice Chair of the Finance Committee.
I second.
Emily motions, Zuleika seconds. IVP?
Yes.
EVP? Gen Rep 1?
Yes.
Gen Rep 2?
Yes.
Gen Rep 3?
Yes.
AAC?
Yes.
CEC?
Yes.
CAC? CAC?
Yes.
Oh, okay. FAC? FAC?
Sorry. Yes.
Okay. FSC?
Yes.
SWC?
Yes.
TSR?
Yes.
And EPP? Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Hi.
Okay. Oh, Bacher? Sorry, I didn't see you.
Yeah, I was waiting for that. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Awesome. By a vote of 12-0, the motion passes and Jenny Wang is appointed as Vice Chair for FICOM. Congratulations.
Thank you. Hope you guys are doing well.
Thank you. We hope you're doing well too. Awesome. Moving on to our next appointment, we have Elizabeth Pham to the Budget Review Committee as the Assistant Director. Taylani, do you want to introduce her too? Taylani? If not.
Sorry, did you mean Kayla's here? Kayla's here, so she can probably introduce her too.
Oh.
Needed.
Okay. Wait. Somebody else just spoke. I didn't hear what they said though.
Yeah, I said, did you mean me?
Oh yeah, go ahead, Kayla.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I honestly was not expecting to introduce Elizabeth, but I'm happy to. So I think that she would be a great addition to the Budget Review Committee team as Assistant Budget Review Director. She has ample experience working not only in student government before coming to college, but also some experience in her first year already with fund management, budgeting, and also some allocation processes with some of her involvements in CClear as transfer staff assistant and wellness staff assistant, and as a workshop facilitator in BSU's high school conference. And as the person who selected her for this position, I obviously identify her as someone who is responsible, reliable, has great work ethic, and shares a similar passion for making a positive impact on the community at UCLA in any way that she can. So yeah, I'm happy to introduce her for all of you guys today. And with these qualifications and more, I know that she can do a great job.
Thank you, Kayla. Elizabeth, do you want to introduce yourself? Wait, Elizabeth, I don't think we can hear you. Can y'all hear? Okay, yeah. Oh, no. You might have to disconnect the Bluetooth from your AirPods.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Oh, we can hear you now.
Oh, okay, great. So as I was saying, my name is Elizabeth Pham. My pronouns are she, hers, hers. I'm a second-year pre-human biology and society major, and some current organizations I'm involved in are the Vietnamese Student Union, CCLAIR, and the Genetic Counseling Student Interest Group. And I'm very interested in the assistant director towards the budget review committee because I'm very passionate about funding events that promote not only diversity, but also inclusion. And also, I just wanted to get to know the USAC platform a little bit. And I understand that the Budget Review Committee is only a small facet of USAC, but I'm hoping to learn more and hopefully dive deeper in my next year, my third year. And some various skills I could bring towards the position or organization, constant communication, and most importantly of all, transparency. And with the assistant budget review director position, I hope to make an impact on social media and get our media out there towards other clubs.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Council, do y'all have any questions for her? David?
Yeah. Hi, Elizabeth. So going into this new year, funding is kind of different, especially as organizations are online. How do you think BOD might change in terms of what to fund or how to fund certain things, you know, in the new year?
Yeah, I definitely think the transition to Zoom has created a lot of different aspects to the BOD fund. So hopefully we can promote to clubs through that we found on the UCLA president page to kind of get more social media input out there to get more clubs to apply to our BOD fund. And yeah.
Thank you. David, did you have another question?
Oh, no, sorry. That was it. Yeah. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you for your question.
So we have Justin and then Christina.
What's up, Elizabeth? I kind of just wanted to ask about, I guess, what your experiences are with running a team and kind of facilitating those relationships, especially in like, the context of, I guess, budget spaces, allocating funding spaces.
Yeah, of course. So throughout my first year, I actually had the opportunity to work as a workshop facilitator for the Vietnamese Student Union's high school conference. And it was my first time doing a budget throughout a college setting, and it was a little bit challenging at first. But throughout the process, we learned how to allocate funds for certain items like markers, whiteboards, candy for our students. And throughout that process, I learned a lot about budgeting, but I'm also open to learning more techniques, tricks, anything to help budgeting and allocating funds.
Awesome. Christina?
Hi, this is kind of a general question, but I just wanted to ask about kind of what your priorities are for the next year.
My priorities for the BOD fund or for myself personally?
For the BOD fund, but also for yourself.
Yeah, that's a great question. So for the BOD fund, I hope to get our Instagram platform out there. So our current budget review director, Kayla, has made an Instagram, and I hope to promote it more to get more followers and get more clubs knowledgeable about the BOD fund. Again, just to get more applicants so we can help fund events to promote diversity and inclusion. And for myself personally, I hope to find out what I want to do in the future. I'm still on the ticks about different career paths, but I hope to figure that out. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm so sorry. I think there was someone who was in the chat or in the call who wasn't supposed to be here. I apologize to anyone if y'all had to see anything, and definitely understand if you're frustrated and need to take some time away from the Zoom call. So yeah, again, we apologize about that. And I think we have it resolved, right, Emily? Cool. Okay. Anybody else have any more questions for Elizabeth? Okay, if not, Elizabeth, feel free to give us your 1 minute closing.
Yeah, so I just want to thank you all for your time, and I'm excited about the assistant director position and learning more about it. And hopefully, by all my social media talk, you guys follow our Instagram account. It's USAC BRC if you guys want to give it a follow, and also promote the Bod Fund as well. That's due on Thursday. So thank you again for everyone for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Elizabeth. ARC?
Hi, so ARC voted 3-0 to give a positive recommendation for Elizabeth Pham. We thought that her previous experiences working with funding and budgeting for her previous events and obligations really prepared her for this position, and we think that she has a lot of room to grow.
Awesome. Anybody else from ARC want to give any comments? Okay, if not, a motion?
I motion to appoint Elizabeth Pham as the Assistant Budget Director.
Second.
Emily motions, Aiden seconds. Okay. IVP?
Yes.
EVP?
Yes.
Gen Rep 1?
Yes.
Gen Rep 2?
Yes.
Gen Rep 3?
Yes.
AAC?
It's 9 o'clock.
Oh, AAC? Okay.
No,
CC?
yeah, yes, sorry, I had to step out, but yeah, I'm back.
CC?
Yes.
CAC?
Yes.
FAC?
Yes.
FSC?
Yes.
SWC?
Yeah.
TSR?
Yes.
ISR?
Yes.
Awesome. By a vote of 13-0, the motion passes, and Elizabeth is appointed to the budget review director thing. Sorry, I'm a little frazzled. Okay. Congratulations, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Awesome. Moving on to our last appointment of the night, we have Joshua Roisman to the ASUCLA Com Board. Taylani.
Hi, everyone. So we had Joshua's interview a while back, and he definitely left a lasting impression on us. He showed great passion and commitment to the Com Board in his interview. And as a transfer student, he used his role on Com Board last year to be a voice for transfer students. Also, while on Com Board, he handled conflict between ASUCLA and the Daily Bruin extremely well, and has went out of his way to meet with other student media leaders on campus. So yeah, we're just really excited about this appointment.
Awesome. Josh, feel free to give your 1 minute introduction.
Good afternoon, Council. Sorry I couldn't be able to make it on camera. My name is Josh Roisman. I'm a fourth year transfer student. And I had the opportunity to serve on the ASUCLA Communications Board last year as an executive committee member. And really, I was excited in this role to meet with the editors-in-chief themselves and really establish a connection between Com Board and the student media. So I had the opportunity to meet with multiple EOCs or editor-in-chiefs of multiple magazines and really listen to their concerns and ask them how I can empower their voices and, understand how I can support them in any way. In addition, really just being a transfer student on this position gives me the opportunity to speak to these publications and ask how we could amplify marginalized voices on campus, and especially transfer voices as well. So thank you for taking the time to consider me for this appointment.
Thank you. Does anybody from council have any questions for Josh? Okay, Emily and then Zuleika.
Hi, Josh. My question for you is, which student media leaders from marginalized communities were you able to meet with? And if you weren't able to meet with all of them, how do you plan to resolve this in the upcoming year?
So I reached out specifically, emailed all student media, not specifically only marginalized communities. And I met with Pham, Daily Bruin, and Pacific Tides. EOCs that I wasn't able to get in contact with, I went out of the way to go into their office and meet with them, or show up to their office to see if I could get face-to-face with them. And if I didn't get them then, I tried my best, follow up again with another email. And I'm going to go back and do the same, especially in this virtual platform. I think it's really important to show, transitioning to a digital space. And, a lot of these publications are not getting the revenue that they got from student paper and advertising. So really going to take the initiative to, if it takes to follow a third email to, make sure that every voice is heard.
Can I follow up for clarification?
Clarification.
Did you say you met with Pac Ties or La Gente? Because I think in our interview, I had written down that you met with La Gente.
La Gente, not Pacific Tides.
Thank you.
Zuleika?
Hi, Joshua. So, being that you were on the communications board last year, I was wondering what your role was or what you did to address some of the concerns that transfers had in regards to the different media outlets, such as the Daily Bruin, given that they misrepresent transfer students in their articles.
So I met specifically, well, thank you for the question. I met specifically with the Daily Bruin editor-in-chief last year, and I asked, how can we find a way where we could amplify transfer student voices? If that takes taking a section of the Daily Bruin to specifically talk about transfer, spotlight. And when a Daily Bruin magazine comes out, whenever it does that, there's always a spot for transfer voices specifically. They talked about doing it and they offered it ideas. We just haven't made progress on it. I also talked to different members in the student media community about starting a transfer student magazine specifically, not their own magazine, but it's really hard to recruit individuals to take this initiative. But I know that conversations were happening.
I do have a follow-up to that. Sorry, Naomi. My follow-up is recently, I don't know if you've seen, but the Daily Bruin did release a AMA, an Ask Me Anything sort of, event on Reddit, in which a lot of transfer students were very angered with the way that the Daily Bruin had been representing or misrepresenting transfer students. I'm wondering, since the Daily Bruin hasn't done any of the recommendations that you had suggested, and they just released, I think, like a report on their editorial, on their, I don't remember that, like their editorial board, that there were 0 transfers on there. I'm wondering what you will do to correct those issues.
So that takes following up again and making sure that, it's followed for. Last year, when those editorials were coming out in terms of elections, that was unacceptable. And I know I spoke about that privately in executive committee member meetings. So when I'm back again, we already had our first, I wasn't able to speak and have a voice this past Monday's meeting, but next month I'm already going to bring up the initiative where, we're speaking about transfers voices and following through on it. And that, I'm going to make that my goal this year. Leaving my lasting, point on Comboard is, leaving a legacy for transfer students and making sure they have a voice.
Thank you.
Aiden?
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Joshua. I was wondering kind of how you philosophically view your role as like the governing board member of student media versus kind of like the editorial authority that student media publications might have. Like, what are the boundaries? What are the barriers that you view? And then I guess specific to the example that Zuleika brought up, One of the things that is an important issue on our campus, but writ large in the news media industry nationally, is the diversification of the newsroom. I know Daily Bruin has made that as a priority, put out their community guide, and has been doing diversity reports. But kind of within that question framework of what's the role of the publisher, what's the role of the editor, where does diversification come into that mix, and how would you view that role?
It's a great question, Aiden, because as a comm board member, I don't have direct oversight of what any magazine prints. We could take back and we can overlook anything that gets challenged, but we don't have any direct say in what should get published or what shouldn't. So I view myself as a mediator between I see myself as like a mediator between the actual comm board and student media. And I want to listen to their concerns, but I can't tell them what to do or what to publish or who to hire as well. I could make suggestions to the comm board and say, how can we improve diversification in terms of staff, in terms of content that we're putting out? And I only can make recommendations to the EOCs that we do. In addition, when we're doing interviews for editors-in-chiefs of the next year, so whoever takes over the Daily Bruin, right? Those questions are being asked. And I'll make sure when last year and this year, I did it as well. I'll make sure that anybody who gets hired has that same mindset and view. So the students next year will feel that, they have their voices heard.
Awesome. Promise?
Hi, yeah, so I just had a question. I just wanted to ask, because this is what we've been going back to is the lack of representation within student media and within student media leadership, et cetera, et cetera. And I know you talked a little bit about outreach, but it seems as though the groups that you named, there weren't many communities represented. So on the committee, this year, and I guess looking back to last year, what is your outreach strategy going to be to get more communities included? And not just next year, but this year. And now, what are you guys doing now to outreach to more communities and to more people?
So thank you for that point, Promise. I just want to make a clarification. I emailed and reached out to every single magazine, no matter I could forward you the emails, what it takes. And I followed up as well. And if they didn't reach out if they didn't get my email, they didn't reply, I showed up to their office. So I can only speak to people who replied back to me, and I will try my best to listen to their concerns. And anytime they come into a comm board meeting, I give them the time of day to listen to their voices and really sure that they're, being heard. But, I try my best, and it takes having those coffee chats. But if they're not going to reply to, me reaching out, I don't know how I could help them in a sense. So I will, during this time this year, I'm going to make sure that if it takes following up 3 times, like I said before, so they know that they have me as a resource. I want to be there to be that resource. So I want to be that bridge that, empowers them and helps them.
Thank you for that, Joshua. I just had a quick follow-up. Completely understand reaching out to other magazines, but how are you reaching out to the community at large of UCLA, especially because media is something that we all take in, whether we like it or not, and how it affects everyone, not just folks who are working in the magazine or have connections in there already. Sometimes it genuinely takes a little bit more outreach to even know that they can be a part of this or have any say or be able to even express any concerns about what other magazines might be posting. Or so I don't know. So that's kind of where my question is coming from. So if you could talk a little bit about outreach in that regard.
So personally, the comm board hasn't had a strategy about reaching out to the general public. General student body can come to comm board meetings and express their public comments and have their, we could listen to anything concerns that are being shown. If it takes, publicly being more transparent about when these meetings are happening. The COM board in the past has never had general meetings where we speak with the student body, because the student media represents that student body. And we trust that the student media is doing their job. And if there's any concerns, we listen to them as well from the student media's outlet. So we have access for students to have the ability to speak to us. And I'm open to anybody when they want to speak to me. But in terms of the general population, I listen to anybody's concerns in terms of my peers, or who have any voices in terms of like what's wrong with a different article, or if they didn't like something posted, they're more than willing to reach out to me and I'll listen.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Josh? Zuleika?
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Oh, okay. Do you want to go Breeze and then Zuleika? Breeze,
no, I'm sorry, Zuleika. I interrupted you. You can go first.
Well, because I know you. It's okay. It's because I know you were in the queue, but I forgot. So we can go Zuleika first.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Breeze. So one of my personal concerns is the lack of transparency with some of the newspapers. Specifically, when we had a meeting with the Daily Bruin, they didn't want to disclose that meeting because they thought that their credibility would be put in jeopardy because they met with the transfer student rep, which I don't see a problem with that if we're trying to improve, some of these diversity issues that they have. And so my question to you is, what are your suggestions to improve these transparency issues that not only are we seeing, but obviously the student population is also seen with some of these media outlets?
I appreciate that point. I can't reiterate this. I don't have any control over how Daily Bruin runs their day-to-day activities. I can't control who the Daily Bruin editors meet with. That's where going to Aiden's point earlier, there's a fine line where I walk, where I serve on COM board and their student media. And I'm not their boss, and I don't overlook exactly how they run their day-to-day operations. I believe that they should be doing a better job at meeting with students and listening to the concerns, but I can only make suggestions to them. I can't ask them to do certain things or force them to put them in a certain direction.
Can I just follow up on that, Naomi? Joshua, I asked, what are your suggestions for the Daily Bruin and for other media outlets? I understand your positionality in this issue, but I asked, what are your suggestions?
So my general suggestions would be to meet, have the ability where students or anybody who would want access to be in these, have access to these Zoom links or meetings so they can hear what's going on. I would suggest that. I would have that conversation. But then again, I want to reiterate, I don't have the ability to force anything on them.
Zuleika, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. Breeze?
Yeah. Hi, Josh. So I guess I kind of wanted to just follow up because earlier you had said that like you don't really know how you can help communities, right? If they're not like responding back to you. And like I personally think like there's a problem with that kind of mindset because like you don't want to place the burden on like communities that may already have other things going on right now. And oftentimes it's just like one individual who's in charge of like so many other things at the same time. So I guess my question to you is, if they haven't responded in whatever manner it is that you've been reaching out to them thus far, like what other alternatives are you going to take to make sure that you are reaching out to those right people?
Thanks for that question. So when I was reaching out, that was last year. So that wasn't during what was going on now, but especially this year, if it takes not only reaching out to the EOC, but members of their staff or anybody around their community. So I let them know that I'm making this initiative to really speak to them. And I've taken that part last year, and I've want to bring that in, keep that momentum going, continuing this year. And I don't want to, and I want to clarify a point. I don't want to feel like they're, putting a burden on anyone. I'm just trying my hardest to build that bridge. And, I want to continue that same way as we move forward. So going back to my main point. So if the EOC doesn't reply to me, it goes reaching out to the opinion editors, reaching out to writers, art directors, and any peers who are around that same community. Going the extra mile.
Thank you. I know I had a question, but does anybody else have follow-up? Okay, I would say, I think I'm the last question then. My question would be, what are some concrete steps that you're going to take this year to elevate, I guess, papers that have been, historically marginalized in a way, like NOMO, like La Gente, like PAC ties?
Great question, Naomi. The way that we elevate these voices like NOM and Pacific Tides is that we find staff for next year. I know this is a very, redundant point, but this is a point where we don't have enough staff or people for next year who are willing to do this job. These magazines will eventually die. Like this year, we're putting out advertisements for people to join these publications. Because if we don't find efficient people to, be an EOC or, an opinion board, then these publications won't be around for the future. So as my job, and I know student media already sent an email to do this, is make sure that we're doing proper advertising so people are seeing that these positions are open, so they know they can have their voices heard, and it continues for the future. So that's the most important part I can make. It's very concrete because that's the future.
Thank you for that. Okay, if no one has any, Aiden, you're the last question of the night.
Sorry, yeah, I just wanted to kind of dig in on that response, since we're reappointing you. So I guess in terms of the outreach and advertisement for the EOCs and for the editorial boards or positions from last year, I hadn't realized that we're having an issue with, I guess, the continuity of these magazines. So I guess what were the challenges from this year, and why? I know you're kind of framing this conversation in terms of doing next year better, but why weren't we able to do that this year?
So this year we definitely didn't have enough applicants. So we only had, maybe 2 applicants who applied for, let's say, Pacific Tides, only had 2 applicants. So we didn't have enough candidate pool to really dig in terms of interviewing. But as far as like the Daily Bruin has their own way of choosing their EOC. So really we got to make sure that we learn from learn what we're doing in the past and make sure that people want to join student media. And, as we're moving forward, we got to COM already took this step because we talked about it last year. Actually, just today, we sent an mass email asking people to join student media again. So it's important.
Thank you.
Okay, I know I said that was the last question, but Sachi really has the last question. Go ahead, Sachi.
Thanks. Super quick. My question is, going forward, how do you plan on continuing to work with USAC, continuing to work with other student orgs to kind of improve on the issues that we've identified today, improve on the issues that you identified from the past year?
Thank you for that question. And I'm going to make it a point where I'm going to meet up at least once a quarter to give you an update on where COM board stands and on the process of, one, talking about diverse roles in student media and making sure that is happening. 2, making sure that we're getting future candidates for EOC positions and opinion editors, so we have these publications for the future and they don't die. And I'll make sure that by winter quarter, I'll have an update for y'all, or the end of fall quarter, and I'll come back to this meeting and give you an update.
Thank you. That's very much appreciated. Since there's no more questions, Josh, do you mind giving your 1 minute closing?
Yeah, thank you, everyone. First off, so much for taking the time to ask these questions. It was really nice to hear any concerns that anyone had about student media. I know a lot has been going on through this time, especially shifting online, and I want to make it a point where I want to support these publications shifting towards online, because a lot of the revenue comes from, like I said before, print magazine and advertising. And in order for these publications to stay around, we have to make sure that they have the funds for it and they're allocated. So really looking forward to supporting these publications and student media. Thanks for taking the time, everyone.
Awesome. Okay, Ark, do you want to give your recommendation?
Hello, ARC voted 1 to 1 to 1, so we do not have a recommendation for Joshua. We felt that we needed to learn some more information about him during the council interview, especially because he is a reappointment.
Awesome. Okay, with that being said, since there was no recommendation from ARC, I think it would be helpful if maybe folks gave their thoughts or concerns or maybe words of advice or things that you want to see from Josh to feel comfortable appointing him, or maybe reasons why you may not be comfortable. Does anyone want to share? Breeze, go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess my only problem is I mean, I'm okay with you being appointed, but I would really appreciate like you keeping in mind the importance of like recruitment. I know that you like keep reiterating like you have nothing to do with the Daily Bruin, right? But I think like if you are sitting on Comms Board chair, like you need to make the effort to make sure that you're bringing attention to like students of color and making sure like that there's more students of color, not only in the Daily Bruin, but that they're being able to like have the positions that they need to succeed at the university. Also making sure that like you do the necessary outreach to all the communities, because I don't know if you like meant to say it the way you said it, but I just like I don't think it was really right to say that certain students or that students haven't been responsive to you, because again, like it's not really on their end to like do, or like the labor goes into like more so your hands, because you are in this position to do outreach.
Sachi?
Yeah, I'd second what Bree said as well. I think in my, like for instance, for TGIF, it's another committee where like we have to do a lot of outreach, right? And yeah, the first round of emails might not go through, but that means really thinking, okay, what is it? Emails aren't working. Like, we have to hold an event. We have to do this. Like, it really means thinking creatively. And like Bree said, like that burden is on the student government leader, or that's on like the committee. Like, that's not on others. Like, we have to kind of think creatively and think really, like, what's the word? Think really, I guess, like strongly towards like achieving our goal, but not expecting it to happen. Sorry, that was like terribly worded. Yeah, I also want to say, I think my last question was, just going forward, like we've presented a lot of issues today, and like we discussed a lot of things in just this 15-minute time period. So I definitely think that coming to council and reporting on what you're doing is something that we'd love from like many appointments, but especially one as important as this. And just keeping in constant communication and asking for feedback and asking for advice, especially if you're not achieving the targets that we've kind of established. So that's just kind of my thoughts and advice.
Okay, Promise?
Yeah, I wanted to just say that I guess for me, like I'm not necessarily fully comfortable giving like a yes vote on this, because after asking my question and also rephrasing my question, trying to ask also, like, moving forward, like, do you have plans for outreach to different communities? Like when you want to serve a community, you have to labor. And it's not on, like, again, the community who doesn't have the institutional knowledge to even know that, like, you exist, to answer your email or to like respond to like your message or something. It takes like advertising and making yourself known, and like also going out of your way to put out that institutional knowledge. And like after asking a few times, like a bunch of people in different ways, it still didn't seem like that was something that you were necessarily understanding fully. So I think, especially in a position like in this position and in how important media is, especially right now, I just don't fully feel comfortable, like don't feel confident in giving a yes.
Thank you, Promise. Aiden?
Yeah, this is a tough one. I think this is probably the appointment that is giving me a great deal of pause. And I think, I echo the concern shared by my fellow council members. But for me, one of the concerns I have just broadly is, one, I don't think we should even be making this appointment in the first place, because, one of the values that I came into this conversation around, the Media and Communications Board is I really support a free and independent press, separate from student government. So I in a weird place for me, I personally feel it to be uncomfortable, voting for Com Board as a USAC member when, Communications Board is the one that's covering us. So that's one thing that is just an oddity that I'm grappling with. But the fact that constitutionally we are mandated to make this appointment, I'm also thinking as, what do I look for in a publisher for a newspaper? And, I greatly appreciate your answer, Joshua, when you were talking about the role of the publisher versus the editor-in-chief and kind of that editorial independence. That's something that I greatly appreciated, but also one of the things that, I also think greatly about is, great newspapers and great media is not only made by great editors-in-chief, but they're made by really bold publishers that push media in a new direction. The Katharine Grahams of the Washington Times, even with the LA Times right now, arguably their diversification effort is being led more by their publisher than perhaps their editor-in-chief at the time, or by their, newsroom leadership. So I was also looking for a bit of more bolder answers and kind of pushing back against just merely suggesting changes. I think there's obviously an ironclad difference between interfering in the editorial parts of a newspaper and media, but I think there are ways in which, a publisher can kind of craft the other parts of the newspaper and media in a way that is reflective of the vision and values that a governing board should be engaging in. When I think back to being on ASUCLA's board, yes, we didn't interfere in the nitty-gritty, the day-to-day of the way ASUCLA was run, but we certainly set the vision, the values, and the tone in which we expected our, management to come to us every year beyond just the hiring of an editor-in-chief. So I was kind of looking for something a bit bolder in terms of the role of the publisher in grappling with these issues we're talking about. So I'm still very unsure. I'd love to hear kind of what my other colleagues are thinking as well. But maybe one of the things we can also come back to is the role of USAC in appointing this position in the first place, because that seems to be a weird oddity for me as well as I'm weighing my decision.
Thank you for voicing that, Aiden. Are these old hands? I think that's a new hand, right? Okay, go ahead, Zoom.
Yeah, I have to agree with Aiden. When I found out that we were appointing this position, I also found it odd because usually these media outlets like to, talk about how independent they are, and they always talk about like the free press. And then I found it really odd that we were the ones who appoint the communications director. So I do find that odd as well. And I think it should be up for discussion. Another thing was I was a little disappointed in the interview because a lot of undergraduate students do not know who this person is, or that this position even exists. And so when there are complaints that are for like these different magazines or these different publications, they do not know who to go to for these complaints. And so I think it's really important that, again, outreach to these communities. If you saw that the publications were attacking a specific community, you should have outreach to transfer students. You should have outreach to these marginalized communities to get that information and learn how to improve that relationship. And so that was my concern, is just the lack of communication and outreach to the general student population, not just to the the media outlets. And so that is my concern. And I don't know if it wasn't done last year, I don't know if it can be done this year as well, given that we are on this online platform, because it's going to be way more difficult to reach out to these certain populations. And so I do want to reiterate that and some of my colleagues' concerns as well.
Sachi?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, thank you to Aiden for kind of contextualizing what this position is. I think understanding a little bit more the potential for the role of a publisher helps me kind of think about what I would want ideally. And I know that in any appointment, any USAC officer, none of us are the perfect candidate. That's a given. But, just taking into consideration recent controversy with student media, taking into consideration what was presented today about the state of various different media organizations and how this is really a dire moment for them. And that, if we mess this year up, we might be messing it up forever. That really, I think, elevates the importance of my vote, of our decision. So, I mean, that's not really providing anything concrete for anyone, but I think just keeping in mind, I guess, that we could have potentially something that could serve these interests and could push the boundaries a little bit and push the status quo, reframes how I was thinking about this decision.
Okay, does anybody else have any comments? Noe?
Yeah, so I think where my reservations come in voting in favor would be kind of echoing what Breeze had mentioned on the mindset that you hold with this position and the mindset that you have in reaching out to these different media groups. The fact that you were kind of placing the blame onto them for not outreaching to you, especially when you hold such an important position in really how they run their org. That's where I come into kind of concerns too about the position and the fact that you're being reappointed for this position. And so that's really where I stand on this.
Thank you, Noe. Anybody else? I know I was, oh, go ahead, Tamani.
Sorry. So I definitely agree with everything that everyone has said thus far. But during the interview with Lalo and I did notice that Joshua was really adamant and passionate about supporting other mediums besides the Daily Bruin, which is what Lalo and I were drawn to. I don't know if he properly conveyed that during this appointment interview. But that was just my feedback from what I saw during the initial appointment interview with Lalo and I. I don't know if that's helpful in any way. I definitely appreciate all of the comments from you all, and I definitely see where everyone's coming from for sure. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't vote, but I also think it's kind of why I asked my question about like what he would do to support the other magazines, because like despite the controversy that the Daily Bruin gets, the Daily Bruin is always going to have staff, whether that be the predominantly white staff that they have, or that be like students of color who are able to like, you know, in a sense, infiltrate the space. I think that my concern really lies with like the fact that like NOMO had, to me, in my opinion, a non-existent and non-present editor-in-chief, and now has someone who's like very much so present within the community, and like that continuity is important. So I feel like though we should like hold the Daily Bruin accountable because they are like our news media source, I think that we should also like really think about what we're doing to elevate other communities who have like just as much validity in the space as the Daily Bruin does. So I don't know if that helps y'all at all. It probably doesn't, but that's just something that I even wanted like Joshua to think about, and like the rest of council members to think about too. Did anybody else have anything that they wanted to add before we go into voting?
Oh, Naomi?
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say, I mean,
sorry.
No worries. I mean, we can proceed into a vote, but I think, at least from my feeling from the discussion, I think we have more questions than answers. And it might be, you know, I don't think I feel confident enough to cast a vote yet, so I would recommend tabling. But I'll defer to your discretion as chair.
Okay. How do others feel about tabling?
I was going to say, as the person who cast the first vote, I also did not know which way I was going to vote, but I would also support tabling.
Okay.
I have a question about tabling. Is it tabling till the end of the meeting or tabling until the next meeting?
It would likely be tabling until the next meeting.
Okay. I'm down for that.
Can I interject and ask how you would gain more information to be prepared to cast a vote? You've had your interview, you've heard everything he's had to say. I would encourage you to move forward, and whether your vote is up or down, to go ahead and cast your vote, since there isn't going to be additional interview happening unless there's something that you can show that would give you more information to be prepared to move forward next week.
I don't know about everyone else, but I think that maybe some council members want more time to understand like what ComBoard does. Like I think that there's certain council members who like know maybe a lot more than others, or who want the opportunity to see like what does a good ComBoard like appointment look like. But I don't know if that's the feeling that I'm getting from others.
So if what you're wanting is more time to understand what ComBoard does and choose to table it to get that, I would encourage you to ask someone from perhaps the student media staff to come and do a presentation at the beginning of next week's meeting for you on what ComBoard does. Or it may even be that it's something that Roy or Patty could do for you at the start of next week's meeting, so that you get a presentation on the role. It will be important though for anyone who wasn't here for this particular interview to then abstain from voting.
Are you all okay with that? Is that the direction that we want to move forward in? Head nods are cool. Or Sachi, do you have a question?
No, I was gonna say I would really appreciate like a presentation or something like that.
Okay, so we can do that. So then we will table this appointment till next week. I'm so sorry, Josh, for making you have to stay till 10 p.m. at night. But we will see you next week.
Okay, thanks y'all for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay. Thank y'all for your discussion and your opinions on that. Those are all really important. And I just really love when like everybody participates in conversations. So like that was really great. But yeah, moving on to our next items. So we have officer reports. I would try to make mine go fairly quickly. And I'll break it up into like COVID related stuff and then like non-COVID related stuff. So I didn't get to talk about this last week, but we got to meet for the SLAC conference with Emily and a few other folks from my office. SLAC is the Student Leadership Association Council. It's supposed to be a conference that takes place twice, sometimes 3 times a quarter. It was a really big thing that Robert pushed for last year, and this year I really want to open it up to make sure that student orgs can also participate in SLAC this year. We've been talking a lot with Occidental, Pitzer, and LMU, and we're really trying to make it like SoCal based, or the first conference a little bit more SoCal based this year, since we all have, I guess, aligning interests. So that's kind of where we are in the planning stage. As y'all know, the campus-wide email is going out. Thank you so much for participating in that. It should be going out tomorrow. We had a little bit of delay because of the announcement of the professor that won the Nobel Prize. But our email's coming out. I guess it won't be as like spicy as like a Nobel Prize, but I would say it's still pretty important. We are also, my office affordability platform also got to meet with Roy and the ASUCLA staff today to kind of talk about the USAC budget and kind of making it a little bit more accessible for students through way of like Instagram presentations and whatnot. Of course, you also saw the USAC Seat at the Table initiative. We've had some kinks that we've experienced, but we are going to iron them out so that the next presentation can go a lot more smoothly. I had my pre-meeting with Vice Chancellor Monroe Gordon for my meeting with the Chancellor this Friday. I'm going to be bringing up basic needs, policing, and the Public Safety Advisory Council, referenda, and then COVID-19, giving my general thoughts. I know that I serve on the Response and Recovery Task Force, but I still think, and the Vice Chancellor also agrees, that it's still really important to voice my stances on things like free testing for students and like the lack of jobs for student workers. So I'm definitely going to be voicing those to the Chancellor. And then on the COVID side of things, our office is working on finalizing a pledge that will go out to students on my UCLA that kind of just talks about COVID-19 and the responsibility that students have. Today we had the opportunity to meet with USC to kind of talk about what does like a cross collaboration of the 2 LA schools look like when it comes to COVID-19. Emily was there and that's been going well. We're pressing forward with our F It Won't Cut It kind of style campaign adjacent. And we're looking for students who are going to be able to lead the effort. So if y'all know of any students too, please feel free to message Christina, Emily, or I, because we're looking for students who are like creatively interested in launching the campaign and maybe who also just have interest in public health at large. But I guess I would say beyond interest, we want students who are like already skilled and that we don't really have to like train in graphic design and whatnot. And then I guess the last COVID related thing that I wanted to address, I've made appointments to almost all of the subcommittees under the Response and Recovery Task Force, whether that be Zuleika, Breeze, Emily, Aiden. I've appointed different students there, and we've created essentially our own student rep task force where we'll be meeting once a week and discussing like the latest developments for like what's going on within the COVID sphere of UCLA. We'll be going over testing, infection control, and making sure that we're all on the same page so that when we go into our meetings, we're making sure that we're advocating for very similar things and whatnot. So if you have any interest in what's going on there, message me. I can invite you to our meetings if you would like to be present, but it's more so a space for us to kind of game plan on what we're going into within the next few weeks. So thank you all so much. I apologize for my lengthy conversation or for my lengthy report. Last thing I wanted to address, we are very aware of the Zoom bombing incidents that are happening. We are actively working to address those with EDI, Dean Galvan, who I also believe is on the call tonight. Breeze is working with the Academic Senate. And I think Aiden will talk about this in his report too, but we are also really thinking about what does UCLA look like nearing the elections and also post-elections, as we know that incidents like this are not going to stop. This is a very unwelcoming welcome to like the start of the year. So yeah, and I will pass it off to IVP.
Hi, everyone. I'll skip all the stuff that Naomi has covered, but some really quick updates. Our office had our first event today, which is the major mentorship event at 6 p.m. and it was really great. We had like over 70 attendees. I was really happy with the turnout. And coming up, we have a student worker town hall in collaboration with Gen Rep 2. This is planned for the 15th, I believe. The 15th, and we have both RSVP forms and also forms to submit questions to Student Legal Services if students can't make it. So my office is trying really hard to increase like accessibility to the information and resources that we're sharing through like events. And so we are also doing that for the Campus Safety Alliance meeting coming up on Friday. So there's a place where students can submit questions that they have for administrative figures. We are going to have Vice Chancellor Beck, ABC DeLuca, and Dean Blandisi, as well as someone from the Ash Center there to answer questions about COVID-19, how UCLA is responding, safety measures, things like that. And so I'm really excited. I hope all of you can make it. It's going to be this Friday at 5 p.m. as well. And yeah, I'll pass it off to Aiden.
Yeah, thanks so much. Since we last spoke at USAC last week, the state legislative session has come to a close. Governor Newsom signed the entirety of the remaining bills that were on his desk, or let them go to veto. In terms of the key student priority bills that our office and UCSA had been advocating on, the vast majority were signed by the governor, which was greatly appreciated. So starting next year, we're going to see increased support and protection for a number of students in vulnerable and marginalized communities, student parents, homeless students, student borrowers. We're going to be doing a post later on with all the high priority bills that our campus backed and the outcomes of them. But the end of session on September 30th came with some really good outcomes that I'm really proud of and really grateful for the support of all of you and the support of our office and our advocates who got them over the finish line. Also today, with kind of the unceremonious announcement that stimulus talks at the federal government have come to a close until the end of the election, we're fully now out of the advocacy cycle and into the election season. So in terms of our office's election-related activities, you've probably seen Bruins Vote is fully up and running in partnership with CalPERG. We're going to be hosting a number of phone banks every day pretty much over the next few weeks, texting students, making sure they're registered to vote, and making sure that they have all the information necessary in order to cast their votes. So I highly encourage you to keep sharing the Bruins Vote content, come to the different events. We have an office ask of our staff to help volunteer, and I'd encourage, if your offices are interested, to also make the ask of your staff, because as we're in the last final 4 weeks of voter registration and turnout, it's really all hands on deck. Separate from that, separate from nonpartisan voter registration, our support of the Bruins for Prop 16 coalition is still going strong. Next week will be our Bruins for Prop 16 week of action, starting off with a Monday kickoff event. Thank you for those who participated in filming or sending in video clips. We're really excited for that kickoff on Monday. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Wednesday, and then actually also Thursday this week, our partner town halls with mother orgs and other organizations on campus. We're really grateful for the broad-based support for Prop 16 we're seeing on our campus. So highly encourage you to advertise and turn out to those events. And then on the Friday, we're planning in conjunction with our partners on the Yes on 16 campaign, a car rally through Westwood as a part of the 16 events throughout the state on October 16th in support of Prop 16. As Naomi mentioned, I'll briefly touch on the fact that we're kind of convening a work group similar to the COVID-19 student task force with Naomi, Emily, Christina, Breeze, and others to look at really how are we planning, and also Dean Galvan, who's on the call, who will be speaking with shortly, on what kind of this post-election period will look like for students. As many of you have probably been reading in the news, there are concerns over what the period after November 3rd up until Thanksgiving or even beyond till Inauguration Day could look like in the event we have some disruptive or tumultuous situations. So we're studying those scenarios closely and trying to figure out how we can best advocate for student academic well-being, mental health well-being, safety, security, everything, in what will likely be a tumultuous period for students. So if you're interested in those conversations, please let me know and we'd be happy to add you to this group. And then the final thing I'll note is we're just gearing up for January, whatever January brings in terms of our local, state, and federal advocacy, so that those planning discussions are ongoing.
Thank you, Aiden. Breeze?
Yeah, I'll try to go quick too. So our Books for Bruins, we finished it off yesterday. Well, yeah, no, we haven't finished it off. We just started basically reading applications. So that's been going on all of today. I've had a lot of meetings with Senate in terms of like continuing to advocate for grading policy and whatnot. And like definitely trying to take a lens at like what it's going to look at post-election. I feel like regardless if Biden is elected, a lot of students will still personally feel impacted and feel like that's not going to make much of a difference. So that doesn't say, even if Biden is elected, not to say that there won't be any further like attacks and more need for protests. And then there's a few events going on coming up this quarter. So on the 21st, Access and Equity is teaming up with the First Year Experience program, and they're going to host a program with them in my staff. And week 6, we're hoping to have an event with the Career Center to kind of outline for like a lot of incoming students how to plan like their academic year and how to get involved. And week 9, we have Counseling Quarterly. It's going to be Tuesday. I've had a lot of meetings with GSA, and we're working currently on a diversity requirement, kind of seeing how we can amplify that in Academic Senate to make sure that professors before they're tenured, having that be something that's looked at. And Sanctuary Campus is currently working on having a pre and post-election type healing space. And we will be reaching out to all your offices shortly to kind of discuss. It's kind of just been brought up recently, but we want to have something and invite as many organizations as possible once we have like more details worked out, just so we don't have to burden anyone. And we're currently partnering with a few people to work on like a queer phobia training using like our social justice initiative fund that we have within AAC. So we've been working on that. And then finally, our Spark campaign is launching in 15 days. So we're like getting prepared for that. So it's pretty busy right now. And thank you, Fernando, for that help.
Yay. Okay, moving on to admin reps, Jessica.
Hi, everyone. Just a couple quick things to note about funding. So if y'all can please remember to send Fernando and I your updated funding guidelines, especially if they've recently been brought to council. Send us a clean, fully edited version so that we can make sure we get that on the USAC website. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention, and I'll let Fernando speak more to this since this is something he's been working on, but we're trying to transition a couple funds over to My UCLA and their funding portal. And so once that happens, just want to put it on y'all's radar that we do plan to shut down the USAC Fund site. It's been a site that has had a lot of technical issues in the last couple years, and we haven't been able to fully resolve them. And it's mostly because the site's just really outdated and it's difficult to maintain. And most of the other funds that were housed there have already moved to my UCLA funding portal. So just wanted to give you a heads up that hopefully within the next few weeks, we will have all of the funding applications moved off of that site, and we will plan on sort of closing that and, you know, putting out a notice to Seoul and to student orgs that it's no longer a functioning site. But that's it for me. Thanks.
Dr. Geller?
Naomi, Dr. Geller is on the East Coast, so
Oh yeah, okay. I'm so sorry about that. Josh?
I actually just wanted to thank everybody for attending the meet and greet last week. Hopefully you found that to be helpful and received direct connections. If there's any administrator that was unable to attend that you want me to gather information from or contact information from, just please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh, for being such a great host.
You know, that's my day job.
Fernando?
Oh, okay. Yeah, the updating the guidelines on the USAC website for the funding. I can go back through the USAC meeting docs and see which ones are there for the most part. But if I don't see updated funding guidelines, I would most likely contact you through Slack or send out an email, just letting you know if you can send me a copy, so we can update that. And and then Breeze. It was also Irma and Vong, so like I don't take all the credit for like the Spark thing. And I think there's other people too. So yeah, that's it.
It's 10 o'clock.
Awesome. Thank you. Patty?
Hi, everyone. Just a quick update. So over the summer, ASUCLA Student Union always puts on some programming for summer in the union. And this year we went virtual, and we wanted to expand those programs into the school year as well. So we are beginning our weekly virtual programming. We had some during Welcome Week. We had 3 days of events, and they were really great. And we're going to have an event this Wednesday, tomorrow. It'll be bingo night and trivia. And we're going to have weekly events every Wednesday at 8 p.m. where students just have the opportunity to come out and connect and have some fun with other students. It'll be student-led. And we're planning for week 3 a pumpkin carving contest and a mask decorating contest for Halloween time of the year. So look out for that. And if you have any questions or want to collaborate, feel free to reach out.
Thank you. Okay. So that's all for officer reports and admin rep reports. We are moving on to new business. So we have 2 more resolutions and then we are done for the night. Our first one is a resolution in support of safe parking and recognition of students experiencing homelessness. Sashi, I'll pass that over to you.
Rachel, who from my office was the lead on this resolution, is coming. Should be here in like a second. But I did actually have a point of inquiry about officer reports. So I know that like since the majority of us aren't doing verbal office reports, we could have like written ones. I just wanted to know like where and how we should submit those to the public.
Yeah, so usually, I mean, you can always post them on and link them to the agenda. Our agenda, correct me if I'm wrong, Emily, is usually sent to the Daily Bruin. Yeah, I see Genesis's name here. So Genesis will probably be going through the officer reports, and like Genesis goes over the meetings once the USAC meeting is over. So I feel like if you wanted to include the written reports in the agenda, and we can leave it there.
Should we like put it, because we're no longer like a bullet point should we just link it like under the agenda or like?
You can ask Emily to leave your item there, and then you can do it that way. But also, y'all can definitely feel free to like amend the agenda and add your officer report if you like have something really pressing that you want to talk about, or like if you feel like I need to give an officer report at least once a month, like feel free to do that too, you know? All up to your own comfort levels. But yeah, if you ever like want to make sure it gets to the Daily Bruin, I would, or like just the public in general, I would also like just send it to Genesis.
Got it. Thank you.
Cool.
With that, I will share my screen for the resolution. And I believe Rachel is here. So Rachel, you can kind of take it away explaining, you know, how you came about what was in the resolution and just some of the key information.
Hello, I'm Rachel. I'm the Project Lit Lighting and Infrastructure / Safety Director for FAC. And one of the things we focus on is like improving safety on campus through infrastructure. And we think that safe parking is especially important now because of the limited available housing on the Hill. And even though students who are at risk of homelessness are like a prioritized group, we still can't guarantee that everyone who really needed housing right now was able to get it. We also put out a survey for people to share their experiences with homelessness / housing insecurity. And there were some respondents who specified that they became recently housing insecure because of COVID-related financial strains. Bruin Shelter is also closed indefinitely right now because of COVID, and they already had a long wait list of students that they couldn't accommodate for. So obviously that takes away options for students as well. Another argument that we had for safe parking is that it is a relatively cheap option compared to like a full-blown homeless shelter. So Safe Parking LA estimated costs for a year-long program at around $130,000 to $140,000, which puts costs for a quarter at around $32,000 to $35,000, I believe. So our goal with Safe Parking right now is to get a small pilot program started where students can park on campus at night for free, ideally in Lot 7 because it's central to campus and most importantly, it's close to Wooden. So once things start opening up more, the patrons can take advantage of Wooden showers and bathrooms. So they could use those instead of portable restrooms, which is what we would probably have to do right now. So basically we're asking admin for a quarter-long program starting in winter quarter, and then we would want to set aside spring quarter to analyze the program's success and talk to patrons who use the lot. And then hopefully if it's successful, we could make it a permanent thing starting in the fall of the next year. So I think that's mostly the gist of it. I don't know if Sachi, you had anything else you wanted to add?
That was great. Thank you so much, Rachel. And thank you also to Rachel for spearheading the kind of cross-office collaboration we had in researching this work. I also want to acknowledge the student group, Safe Parking UCLA, who has done a lot of the initial policy proposals on this and provided a lot of the information. Last year's council did pass a safe parking resolution as well. And while part of this is a renewal of that resolution, it's, as Rachel said, especially important to consider solutions such as safe parking because of the financial constraints posed by COVID-19. But yeah, I don't know if anyone else who sponsored the resolution wants to speak, or let me know if you want me to like scroll back up anywhere if you have questions.
Christina?
Hi, my question is just that I know that it says like it's a one-quarter program for winter and it will be evaluated in spring. So I was wondering like why not just, I mean, I assume that you have a reason too, like why just in winter and not like kind of like have it continued winter and spring and then do the analysis at the same time as the program is actually happening?
That is a good point. That's definitely an option. So like the timeline is not completely a strict thing, but my reasoning for setting aside a time period where the program is not going on is because I think it would be easier to analyze things afterwards while we can like focus on analyzing the success and not have to worry so much about like ongoing maintenance of the program.
Awesome. So we'll go, I think these are all new hands. We'll go Zuleika, then Aiden.
Yeah, I just want to say that Rachel, you did a really great job on this resolution, and also the Safe Parking Committee. A lot of the information is really important, I think, especially now, given the circumstances that we are in. I mean, these students, they need some type of support, especially now. And I feel like the fact that campus is empty, there should be absolutely no reason why we cannot help these students. As a person who, I mean, my brother, I'm just gonna say it, my brother last year, he literally lived in his car the whole time commuting to school. He would sleep there 5 days out of the week. And the only reason he was able to do that is because his school allowed safe parking within their campus community. And I think that this is something that we are able to offer, and it's something that should have been done a while ago. This is a basic need, and if we cannot offer some form of housing, then we need to do something in response to support these students. So I just want to thank you for your hard work, and I'm really happy that we are seeing this resolution being brought back.
Thank you for that, Zuleika. Aiden?
Yeah, I really wanted to echo thanks to Sachi, Rachel, and Safe Parking UCLA. I mean, I was really, really impressed by this resolution because it tracks with, the data, the research, everything that we're seeing around safe parking. Opponents will always say, oh, safe parking isn't safe for students. Opponents will say, it doesn't make any difference in the housing crisis. Opponents will say, like, it's not where we should be. But like, basic needs practitioners, housing and security experts say that when you craft safe parking policies with an eye for this being transitional, with this coupled with wraparound services, understanding that this is one part of a larger ecosystem of housing and security interventions, it can make a real tangible impact in student lives. And I think, none of us are happy that we're in a situation where we have to have safe parking. In an ideal world, we wouldn't have this housing crisis. We wouldn't have the lack of affordable options for students. But this is the world we're in. And, this resolution and this program and this proposal would make a tangible impact in the lives of students tomorrow if it were implemented. So that's how I kind of address folks that are opposed to this. And that's why I'm so enthusiastic about voting yes on this. So thank you.
Anyone else? Sachi, was that an old hand?
It was an old hand, but I'll just kind of echo everyone and also just say that, the testimony form that we sent out, I mean, there's no way that any USAC survey will ever get, the amount of testimonies that actually exist. But, just those few, like every single story that we hear, I think, again, if we can impact just even one student in a positive way, that is a success. And so I'm really hoping that with continued advocacy after passing this resolution, that's something that we can do. So thank you, everyone.
Awesome. Okay. A motion will suffice if we're ready to vote.
Oh no, you got it, Justin.
No, okay. I motion to approve a resolution in recognition of students experiencing homelessness and in support of safe parking.
I second.
Justin motions, Sachi seconds. IVP?
Yes.
EVP?
Yes.
Gen Rep 1?
Yes.
Gen Rep 2,
Yes.
Gen Rep 3,
Yes.
AAC,
Yes.
CEC,
Yes.
CAC,
Yes.
FAC,
Yes.
FSC,
Yes.
SWC,
Yeah.
TSR,
Yes.
ISR, ISR.
Yes.
By a vote of 13-0, the motion passes, and a resolution in recognition of students experiencing homelessness and in support of safe parking has passed. Yay, thank you everyone for your really important work on all of that. And then our last item on the agenda is a resolution against UC layoffs, and I will turn it over to Justin.
Thank you, Naomi. Bakar just said voted yes on the last two.
I got his vote.
Am I able to share screen? I think I am. Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
So yeah, first off, I wanted to show like a token of appreciation to Aiden for approaching me with like the intent to write this. This resolution has been coming for a few weeks now, and I am generally a person who is against resolutions just for the sake of resolutions. I generally want them to either be in response to something or like as a part of a larger campaign to actually help help folks or help the folks who are running a campaign, you know. And this resolution does serve that purpose. Ask Me 3299 was reaching out to EVPs and the like Aiden, about showing like student support around really not good things that the UC is practicing and right now during coronavirus and the pandemic, the resulting mass layoffs, economic downturn, and like possible future and the reality of evictions and the like. So I wanted to thank Aiden for like approaching me to help write this, and also folks and organizers who've asked me in kind of helping with the information gathering and crafting this. Also, I can't read the chat. I don't know if someone says something. I don't know why I can't do that. And then I also wanted to thank Emily for helping with proofreading and all that. And I wanted to give a shout out to SLAP as well, the Student Labor Advocacy Project. I always like to read, and kind of also helping with proofreading and checking. So essentially this resolution is us as USAC coming in full support for Ask Me service workers across the UCs, but especially here at UCLA. And taking a firm stance against practices that the UC has adopted. I don't think this should be a radical statement in saying that the UC runs like a company, and I don't think it should run like a company. I don't know why it's not even kind of in the conversation that we should at any cost avoid layoffs of our most vulnerable folks who like make this university run, when it's not even really a conversation about whether there should be more, I guess, spread out and equalized pay cuts. Yeah, this I'll kind of scroll through the resolution. I don't think I'll read it, just because I think it's about, I think it's 2.5 pages, not super bad. But I also want to get us out of here. It's been 3 hours. Basically the first kind of part of it function as calling out, I guess, initial UC practices promising certain ways of keeping workers and not avoiding layoffs. And the reality that Ask Me 3299 in particular represents Black, brown, Indigenous and primarily women workers in our custodial maintenance, patient care, and other jobs on campus. And it kind of, after that, reads as a timeline from May, around the start of this pandemic, all the way to August, with specific acts that have happened at different UCs, taking measures to impose hiring freezes, layoffs, cutting costs in many different ways, and primarily affecting ASME workers and or previously outsourced workers. And that's where I want to, I'll take a little bit more of a focus. I want to go to, I'll read it out. This is what has specifically gone on here at UCLA. So it's on the second page, mid-page. Whereas in July, contrary to the UC's promise to insource previously contracted workers, UCLA chose to not insource Francisco Solorzano, a worker of 24 years, and 22 of his coworkers when they terminated their contract with DMS. So a quick kind of explanation of what that means. Essentially, it was kind of a big deal, a huge deal, when ASME 3299 won an end to outsourcing for these workers in, again, custodial patient care sectors in the UC. In their 3-year-long struggle and strike against the UC. Essentially, for a long time, the UC had been using this practice of outsourcing, in which they wouldn't hire employees directly, basically, in which they would be able to unionize. They would hire or make contracts with outside firms, including DMS, and DMS would actually be the employer of someone like Francisco. And so a big thing and a big victory in this latest contract was that the UC would be insourcing these workers. And UCLA right here has been choosing to not do that, and instead is essentially choosing not to insource them and also laying them off. Then I go into other bad things that have happened recently. UC Merced terminated a senior custodian, Berta Perez, after she spoke up. She was essentially a leader in the custodial staff to provide proper PPE, training to custodians, masks to workers, and enforcing social distancing. And most folks are reading her firing as retaliation, definitely in the union. I guess I'm biased, but it's hard not to read it as retaliation. So yeah, essentially what this resolution calls upon is that USAC demands at UCLA specifically that Chancellor Bach insource the 23 workers unjustly laid off, which did violate the latest contract agreed upon in February. So I'll pause here. Does anyone have any questions or any clarification?
I just wanted to say that I'm in full support of this resolution, especially after the summer, like working with a union that was, and a lot of the work that I was doing was like against the UC's private equity investment that like it is made off of the exploitation of a lot of workers who were then laid off during this pandemic and then denied benefits. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that they aren't trying to find a way to keep workers on or to at least pay them and alleviate folks in this like already trying time. And I think that like we need to start putting people over property, like just point blank period. These people matter way more than the UC revenue, and that's just the bottom line. So yeah, just wanted to say that.
Anyone else? Or Aiden, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to thank you, Justin, and your office for your hard work on this. I mean, when AFSCME approached us as EVPs originally to run resolutions at all our campuses, I knew that, on our council, both you and Emily are really leaders in the space, and I'm really grateful for your leadership in drafting this resolution. It was, our office really viewed it as a learning experience for us, and we're really, grateful for the work of you, the work of SLAP, Emily, for really crafting this hard-hitting resolution. And you're right, no layoffs is the floor. It's not a radical position. It's not, something that is our big aspirational goal, but it's something that we as a council should be all in favor of as the beginning for our work this year. So, I know this is going to be a continued issue at the system-wide level, and really grateful for your leadership and partnership on this.
Thanks, Aiden. I did want to also shout out your folks from your office, Nina and Courtney. They were a huge help in writing this. Yeah. Are there any other folks who want to say a piece?
Can I jump in? I can't say anything better than what has already been said, but I just wanted to voice my support for this resolution. Obviously, I'm co-sponsoring it. I think, at an institution like an elite university, students and workers really need to stand together and show solidarity for each other.
I don't want to say, I completely support this resolution as well. And thank you to all the folks who labored to create it. I wanted to call attention to the the bad practices that the UC is already engaging in, especially in the treatment of their workers or former workers. We have Maya Wong, who's the VP of UC Merced here, and I've had the opportunity to also talk to the president at Merced, and Elizabeth has already expressed the discontent that a lot of students have expressed over the firing, or I guess what seems like a retaliation against Berta and other workers. So I agree. I think this is definitely a time where we should stand in solidarity with workers, and of course, like y'all said, this is the bare minimum that should be being done. So thank y'all to everybody, to whoever put this together, everyone that worked hard on this. And yeah, if there's no more comments, Justin, do you have any closing words, or if you want to, make a motion?
Sorry, it took a second to unmute, and also folks called me out. I forgot I was still sharing. Yeah, I think, yeah, no, thanks to all of you for supporting this and all of that. I think it can really be a huge statement being at UCLA to come out and support and in solidarity with. Did someone want to make a motion?
I motion. Oh my God, I literally just forgot how to motion. I motion to vote to approve. What do I say?
Approve.
To approve a resolution against UC layoffs.
I second.
Okay, Sachi motions, Emily seconds. Damn it, I closed the agenda. Hold on. I have really bad cramps, everyone. Sorry. IVP?
Yes.
EVP?
Yes.
Gen Rep 1?
Yes.
Gen Rep 2?
Yes.
Gen Rep 3?
Yes.
AAC?
Yes.
CEC?
Yes.
CAC?
Yes.
FAC?
Yes.
FSC?
Yes.
SWC?
Yes.
TSR?
Yes.
ISR?
Yes.
Okay. By a vote of 13 to 0 to 0, the motion passes and a resolution against UC layoffs is approved. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, and that's the end of our agenda for tonight. So thank you to everybody who stayed for this entire time. Congratulations. This was our first meeting of the school year. We have, what, like 29 more to go. So look forward to spending the year with y'all. Not the face, Sachi. Okay. Oh, I forgot to say, I adjourned this meeting at 10:27 p.m.
The recording has stopped.
Now everybody has the update.